All right, all right, all right. How's everybody doing tonight? Hope every hope everybody doing okay. Welcome to Thursday night here on these YouTube streets. My name is 12 Gauge. Sorry I'm running a little late. Had I haven't been feeling well, so I took a cold medicine when I got home and I just woke up. So I apologize for that. Tonight we have a special guest that's going to join me. We're going to continue to discuss the dark triad guest. I'm going to put the link in the chat. So if you just come on up whenever you get a chance, I'll introduce you once you get into the back room. So the rest of you, let me go ahead and name off who's in here: Lori, Rondi, Beth, Twizzle, Absolutely 13, Lenore, Ginger, Amicus, Texas. All right, tonight, let me go over some rules in the chat just in case we have some new people that are in here that don't understand the chat rules here. We are a friendly group. We do hold your opinion or your thoughts as being relevant, and they are your own. We agree to disagree, and we try to keep it classy in here. The mods have been instructed to monitor the chat. At any time that it becomes too out of control, they will give you a warning. And if it's really, really, really out of control, or you're bashing one of the panel guests, that will get you booted out of here quickly. So please no bashing the panel guests or anybody in the chat. We agree to disagree, and we have a good time in here. It's pretty chill. It's pretty awesome, if I say so myself. So the other day I presented this dark triad, and this is the part two. And I guess once the panel guest comes up, I will go ahead and give you an understanding of what the dark triad is, so that everybody understands it before I play the rest of the video that I have set forth. Let me go ahead and pull that up. So how's everybody doing tonight? Why don't y'all type your feelings in the chat? How you're doing, how you're feeling. Let me know. Let me know. Let me know. Let me know while I'm pulling this up. Because I watched so much stuff today and the last couple days that it's kind of difficult to find that. Okay, our guest is in the back room. So let me go ahead and make sure everything's all right with that person so I can bring her up. If you want to be on camera, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine. If you want to leave your name as it is, that's fine. If you want to change your name, that's fine. So give me a thumbs up if you're okay with everything. Okay. Well, everybody, we have Ginger Peoples here. She's going to co-host with me tonight. So why don't y'all give her a hands up, the little clapping hands in the chat if you know Ginger. And here we go.
Hey guys.
Hey, Ginger,
Hey,
welcome.
hey, thank you. Hey, 12 Gauge, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing really good. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. This case is just crazy.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I was talking about it last night. A matter of fact, I had some guests on here last night, and we went about 2 hours. So um, I'm going to use my little avatar tonight because, like I said, I just got I just got up from a nap, so I'm probably not presentable for YouTube. I don't want to get banned off YouTube just trying to do a live on a camera. So hope you understand.
Okay.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so first things first. Why don't you tell the chat a little bit about yourself as far as the true crime creator and how long you've had your channel and what you mostly talk about over there on your channel. Give them a little bit of insight on who you
Okay.
are.
Okay. Well,
Hold on,
my
hold
name
on.
is,
Let me stop. Let me
okay, I'm
stop.
sorry.
That's you're fine. Just don't give out any private information. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. You're good. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, hey guys. My name is Ginger, and um I've been investigating mainly missing people, missing children for a really long time. I mean, I would say I would say I started when I was in my teens, even. And I just did it amateurly. And this case is really interesting to me because I have children, I have teenagers of my own. And it's just something that, I've been always just very drawn to, the true crime thing. I kind of have a different perspective of things. I mean, everybody has such a, like a unique way of presenting themselves, on their channels and things of that nature. I'm more, I'm such an empathetic, deep, compassionate person, and I just like I have feelings, like gut instincts, things of that nature. So when I look into a case, it's more like where I sometimes I can see things, I can have visions and things, if that makes any sense. It doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes I have really very articulate, like, dreams, even if that, if anybody can relate to me on this. Um, so I've just always been interested, in true crime. And like I said, I have two teenagers, and one is going off to college, and I'm just like so like freaked out about it because there's so many different parallel constructions within this case. It just is, it's crazy to me. And to know, that there's so much corruption going on, there's so much evil in the world and so many different.
Yes, yes, indeed.
So yeah,
Okay,
missing
well,
missing people is more my, like my avenue. That's more my thing. I kind of vibe more to that. But
well,
yeah,
that's
this
awesome. That's awesome. So, have you been following the Sebastian Rogers case at all?
I have not actually. There I do. So I was interested. I did hear a little bit about that case, but I don't know much about. Is that the little boy?
Yes, the 15-year-old
Okay.
from Hendersonville.
Okay, I did actually see a little bit on I watched a little bit about how you had talked about him. But no, I don't know the case specifically. There's a local girl that went missing. So I've been, trying to investigate her case.
Okay. All
So
right.
that is,
Before you sign off tonight, if you give the mod your channel name, we can drop your link in the chat and have people go over and check your page out. See if they
yes,
like what they
absolutely.
see and sub up.
That would be amazing. I mean, I only have like 7 subscribers, and God bless all of them. Um, so I'm
Yeah.
just starting, because I'm not really into technology and things of that nature. I just, I'm just starting out. So
Okay. Amicus, I see you up here. You need to hit your mic or your cam in order for your device to connect. I don't mind you coming up here, but it says device is not connected. So when you have that problem, it just means that you need to hit either your mic or your camera or both. Well, Ginger, I'm thrilled that you're up here. You and I have been talking behind the scenes a little bit about setting this up, and you've expressed interest in wanting to come up here and talk about it. And it's okay to have different beliefs on the case. I mean, that's what makes it interesting because
hmm
um, I know that a lot of my chat members have different opinions, and that's what makes the whole case so interesting. We get different perspectives, and it is what it is. So be just be yourself. Just feel free to talk as you would be talking on a live or some or yeah, like you'd be recording your own video at home or something. We're all friendly here. We're not gonna attack you. We're not gonna do any of that. Like I said, if anybody starts being rude or anything in the chat, the mods have been directed to let that person out of the chat room. Okay, so it looks like
absolutely.
Amicus
Thank
wants to come
you.
up. Do you know who Amicus is?
Amicus says, I do know a lot of creators, and a lot of people should like recognize my name because I do have a lot of different opinions about the case. So, but
Mm-hmm.
that particular name does not ring a bell for me. I mean, I'm open to anything, and I truly appreciate being here, and I'm thankful to everybody at 12 Gauge. I thank you immensely. Yes, please, the more the merrier is how I look at it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Hey, Rondi, either you or some other mod that's in the chat, if you could look up Ginger People's page, I think it's just under that name. So you'll see her page if you can put it in the chat. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. For the people that are in here, please hit the like button. And if you're new to the channel, please give us a chance and hit the subscribe button if you like what you see and what you hear. The last couple nights I have had panel guests, and I usually have panel guests. So let's see where we go with this. Okay, I'm going to start off with the dark triad. This is the explanation of what the dark triad is. So whenever this individual is talking about it, you'll understand what it is, chat, because I didn't explain it the other day when I did part one, and I figured that out today. So please be a little kind that I did not do that for you. Here we go. I did not draw these either.
Hey Psych2Goers, welcome back to another Psych2Go video. Have you ever heard of the dark triad of personalities? Well, what is the dark triad and how was it discovered? So, the dark triad is 3 overlapping yet distinct personalities: subclinical narcissism, subclinical psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. By subclinical, we mean that someone might show the traits of a narcissist or psychopath, but they're not severe enough to be diagnosed as a disorder. In 2002, Delroy L. Paulus and Kevin M. Williams at the University of British Columbia did a study on whether these three personalities were identical by comparing the three personality traits of the dark triad.
So the individual in the video I'm going to show tonight, I'm probably going to, back it up a little bit so you understand exactly what he's talking about since we're watching this video. The dark triad he talked about as far as being Mr. Koberger or the suspect of who could have committed these crimes, they would have these three traits: narcissism, Machiavellism, and psychopathy. So these three traits would have led this individual to commit this crime because it's three distinctive personality types that not everybody has. So we talked about psychopathy, which is a psychopath. The Machiavellism is kind of like a in the shadows, kind of not wanting to be seen, but domination. And narcissism, of course, is all about themselves. So let's continue to hear what they got to say about these.
With three other psychological aspects. They found that the correlation patterns were very different and concluded that psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism were indeed distinct. So, what's the difference? Narcissists tend to have a large sense of self as they feel entitled and superior to those around them. Machiavellianism, on the other hand, tends to be more manipulative and selfish, and psychopaths are more insensitive as they lack empathy for others and act without thinking. They are all associated with varying degrees of deception, questionable morals, and self-interest, but what they do have in common is disagreeableness. It's also thought that there is a relatively high genetic component to all three personality traits. Interestingly, psychopathy and Machiavellianism are more closely related to each other than narcissism, possibly because narcissism is the only one that can grow from a feeling of insecurity. What about sociopaths? It's easy to confuse psychopaths and sociopaths, so you might be wondering, why aren't sociopaths included in this list? Both are listed as antisocial personality disorders in severe forms, and both share a lack of moral judgment and lack of empathy. There are, however, a few things that distinguish the two. Psychopaths are likely to be pathological liars, and they rarely feel guilt since they do whatever they have to benefit themselves. They're known to be fearless and often good at mimicking behaviors to hide their psychopathic traits. Sociopaths, on the other hand, tend to have a conscience, even if it's weak. Although they are self-centered, they do care for others more than psychopaths. They're also less skilled at hiding their behavior and act in ways that make self-indulgence and lack of empathy more obvious. Although it's unclear as to why sociopaths are not included in the list, it could be due to how environmental factors are more influential to the cause of sociopathy than genetics. How does someone with one or more of these traits act? According to a 10-year review study, members of the dark triad have similar behaviors in a variety of social settings. In the workplace, for example, they're likely to fit the trope of an entitled boss or leader who is able to charm their way to the top, but not make genuine connections with the people around them. In education, cheating and plagiarism are predictable. This is more associated with psychopathy and Machiavellianism. Other than their displays of social entitlement, their behaviors differ more when it comes to interacting with others. Psychopaths tend to give negative first impressions as they want to appear to be intimidating. They also have an uncanny ability to mimic the behavior of those around them to blend in. People with Machiavellianism, along with psychopaths, tend to come off quite cynical and morally suspicious. Narcissists, interestingly, have a skewed sense of self and tend to view themselves as far better leaders and far more empathetic than they actually come off as. Where do we go from here? As you've seen, recent research has made it possible to distinguish between the dark triad of personality. But what does it mean moving forward? Researchers have started to look into the function of the dark triad in the business world, how these personality traits relate to the ability to maximize profits. Psychiatrists have also looked at how the dark triad are more vulnerable to addiction disorders. There are even studies that look into the relationship between the dark triad and affective disorders such as depression. We hope we were able to help you understand and distinguish the different personalities of the dark triad. If you're interested in learning more on each of these personalities in other videos, let us know in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with those who might benefit from it. The references and studies used in this video are added in the description below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
And I did pin this video in the description area. Psych2Go is the creator. So I thought that was an interesting layout of the 3 dark triads as far as the narcissist, the Machiavellianism, and the psycho, the other one. Gosh, my head is all over the place.
That was really interesting, actually, because that's something that is really important to talk about, is the person who really committed this crime. Who would do that? What kind of mind do they actually have? That's
Yes. And you're asking the right questions in the proper way. It's who could have done it, what type of person could have done it. Because even if we go with the avenue that the suspect that we have right now, or that they have locked up, is innocent, who else could have done it? What type of individual could have done it? And I don't believe that people are thinking that far in advance, because like I was sharing the other night when I did part 1, and you'd let me know if you agree or disagree, Ginger. This individual is a very disturbed, dark individual. An individual that is not like you and I. Because obviously we're not murdering people. We're not going into homes in the middle of the night and committing these crimes. So to think on that line, it has to be an individual that is not of the norm. Someone that just did not wake up that morning and say, you know what, I'm going to go kill 4 people.
I don't understand. I really, truly don't think, even though I don't know who really knows Brian Koberger, who really actually knows them, went to school with them, hung out with them, is their, best friends with them, has spent a numerous amount of time with this dude. You know what I mean?
Right.
So to say, he's not that way is, in my personal opinion, I mean, I have my thoughts and feelings on this, and somebody who, okay, he's going to school, how old is he? What is he, 28?
Well, he was 28 when he committed the crime, so he was older than these individuals in the home.
So he's actually still, I mean, he would have been getting his doctorate, correct?
Correct.
And he would have been, when he graduated, how old would he have been? 30 something?
30 something, yes.
Is that normal to be that old?
Not necessarily, because usually you get your bachelor's if you go in at 18, 4 years, so 3.5 if you're accelerated. So let's say 24, or not 24, 22 or 21, and then you go 2 more years to get your master's, and then I think your doctorate is 2 years as well, so that's 4. So about 27, 26, you'd get your doctorate.
Okay, why is he so old and still in school?
I don't know the answer to that, but he could have got a
Yeah.
late. He could have got a late start, and I guess that was a rhetorical question, right?
Yeah. No, I
So,
was just thinking about that the other day actually, because I was thinking, shouldn't he have been actually graduated by now? I mean, I could be completely off, like I'm just saying physically, he should have, I thought maybe he should have been, graduated. But, the psychology of it, of who he is as a person, I don't even know what kind of voice he has. Like,
right.
I would, the whole court, like proceedings and things like this drives me crazy because, and this is something I've pointed out before, is why in the world are these court proceedings so grainy? When you look at them, like everybody looks like they're aliens, like he doesn't even look like who he is, who they say he is. Are these actually, is it actually him in court? Did anybody actually physically see his face? I
Yeah.
don't know. These are like just questions that like run through my brain. I'm
Well,
just like,
that's fine. That's fine, and they're good questions. To answer the chat, We're not saying that he's old or that he was old for being in the level of education he was at, because we understand that there's a lot of individuals that can go back to school at any age. That's not what
right.
we're addressing. We're kind of talking about um, whether he was on track right out of high school, he went to college, this, that, and the other. Would he have been 28 had he went that route, or was there some interruptions in there that caused him to start a little later or anything like that? Because I mean, we haven't been prevalent to any of that information. So I guess that's the question um, that Ginger was referring to.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
um, he is a mystery. He is a mystery.
Mm-hmm. He
Um,
is really, because yeah, he really is. I mean, he hasn't spoken. He hasn't said anything. They say that when I was on Tommy's, on his chat, they said that Andrew came forward because I asked the question, well, was he ever investigated? You know,
right.
and they said, yes, he was investigated, but they never recorded his investigation, which to me was like, well, who do you know is investigated for a crime and isn't actually tape recorded or video recorded? That's crazy to me.
Oh, you're talking about interrogated once they arrested him?
Yes. Yep,
Okay.
interrogation. Yes,
Yeah,
interrogation.
that's what I heard also, that he was interrogated without any kind of documentation, but that could just be hearsay. Um, but everything that we hear is not always 100% truthful. You know, it's easier to make the pieces fit if you stick to the factual information that you're given. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Even though we want to believe certain people on what they state. I was in a chat room earlier, and thank you, Jeff. And I was in a chat room earlier, and I know from my own eyes, and I presented this on my channel. I presented the Pennsylvania affidavit, and they had receipts on there that showed the stuff that they retrieved out of Brian's car. Well, the creator said, well, let me Google that. So she Googled it. She went down 2 links, didn't search any further, and said, nope, that's not true. It's not on Google. So she presented that to the chat. And I was like, Oh my God, you didn't even do a thorough search to really give them the opportunity to see what was in that vehicle. They retrieved a shovel, goggles, brown boots, a hotel key, loose change, um, mask. So all that was retrieved out of his vehicle. But she didn't go digging that deep. She just wanted to show the audience that she Googled it, and Google didn't come back with anything, and she stood behind her claim that there was nothing there. There was nothing in the car.
Oh,
Which,
wow.
if you're going to make a claim like that, I believe that it's not as creators, it's not our duty to try to direct the narrative to the chat. Like I'm right down the middle. Sometimes I speculate, and one of these days I'm going to do a speculation video where I'm just speculating on everything that I've heard about this case and seen about this case, and see where it goes. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
um, but I believe, and I don't have, and everybody doesn't have to believe like I believe, but if we're going to present information just to show the chat that we're behind their thoughts, that's like, I don't know. To me, I would never do that to the chat. I give them the
Mhm.
opportunity to make up their own mind whether he's guilty or whether he's not. I just try to
Oh,
pre-
right.
I just try to present the facts.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
let me play this video a little bit because it's a long one. That's why I had to cut it up into two parts, and then we'll discuss a little bit more, okay?
Okay.
This is Dr. Drew and Jonathan Gilliam, and this was a video that was made 1/6/2023. So this was after his arrest. And this individual has worked with multiple agencies. He was a Navy SEAL, FBI agent, author, and he has his own podcast. So, once again, try to take this with a grain of salt. And the reason that I'm playing it is not because I want to show. Well, he's talking about Brian, obviously, on this podcast, but I want you to take a look at what he's saying, just in case your opinion is that Brian is guilty. What the individual who committed these crimes has the capacity of being like the behavior trait, the mentality, all that. That's what I'm showing here. I'm not trying to
Mhm.
I'm not trying to convince you that Brian's innocent or guilty because that's up to you. And it's not. I don't have a dog in the fight, so it doesn't really matter to
Mhm.
me whether you know at this point whether he's guilty or whether he's innocent because like I've told the chats, because we have individuals that are trying to push the evidence and all this other stuff, and he should be let go because of this, that, and the other. And what I've told the chats is this, and I don't know if you agree with it, but the only way that he could be set free at this point are two ways, or could have been two ways. One way would have been the prosecutor saying, "Hey, there's not enough evidence to keep going on. We can dismiss the charges against Mr. Koberger and let him free." The other way would have
Mhm.
been bail. You know, if the judge would have given him bail and he could have afforded it, then he could have been let free. Or if that changes and they somehow implement bail and he's able to afford it and be let free. So
No,
those
I totally get you. That's it, because you're totally right on that.
okay. Is there anything that you could see that could possibly at this point in the game let him go? Like there's no way that the lawyers can say, you're right about the evidence that's been possibly withheld or the evidence that's been tainted. Um, we need to file a motion to let him go.
Well, we don't even know because of the gag order. we don't know what the prosecution actually, has.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing, is like, why is it such a big secret? I mean, like I said, I have my own, feelings and my own, thoughts on this. And like you said, I don't want to, like, everybody has their own opinions,
Right.
too. But it's just like, now, can you, because it's a death, like, he's on death row, can he actually get bail?
I believe in Idaho there is no bail due to the death penalty because it's a death penalty case. But I know here in Texas we just had a capital murder occur, and the judge gave them $10 million bails, both of them. So I don't understand how it's different as far as the law is concerned, but
Mm-hmm.
it's up to the judge and how he perceives the person who's accused as being a threat to society. That's what bail is meant to give you freedom to get your life stuff in order before the trial, just in case you are found guilty, or to continue to investigate your case to possibly put it into discovery before the trial starts. That's what all that's
Mm-hmm.
for. So no, BK's isn't a capital case. I was talking about the case here in Texas where a 13-year-old girl was murdered and two illegals did it from Venezuela, and they were given bail of $10 million that was set. So, um,
Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah. So I wasn't talking about Brian. I wasn't talking about his case. But
Oh,
let's listen to the video a little bit, and then we'll discuss it because I gotta pause it in between. So we'll discuss bits and pieces of it. Okay.
okay.
All right. Here we go.
It was like when I first heard it in the news and I heard like these young girls and there were 4 people and I was like, how did he get to all of them like
without somebody calling the
in
police
a
or
row?
something. Yeah.
Like it was like I thought maybe they were drugged or something, but it was even more sinister. But
Well,
Caleb probably
they
has
were
some
they were
questions.
intoxicated. I mean, I think these women were intoxicated. Most of the people, I don't know about the roommate, but I definitely, you can see it on camera that Maddie and Kaylee, they were intoxicated. The other two, Zana and Ethan, had been at a party all night. So I think that played a huge role in this, that the victims were intoxicated, and people just do not have a good grasp, and it's understandable, of what a knife attack is actually like. It's not like the movies.
Was this guy at the
where
party too? Is he there?
No, he wasn't. He left his
Oh,
house
okay.
about 15 minutes away at about 2:30, 2:40 in the morning.
Tell us again about the knife attack. So I feel like we have some useful information there.
Yeah, so knife attacks are very lethal, and there's two things that can, with a knife, that can cause problems where people won't fight back. One is, if you get a severe stab wound to the lung, your lung could collapse, to the neck, or these places where your function in life, which is breathing, is disrupted. That's a major blow to a person who's never been injured or never been in a fight before. I mean, you're going from never being in a fight to now you're trying to fight for life. Also, hitting any artery, if you don't get a tourniquet on it, you're going to bleed out within a minute at the most. So you're looking at people that woke up or were woken up or didn't wake up. They just, a traumatic injury to their body instantly occurred. And this knife that he used is not my pick of knives that I use for anything. It's a old K-bar knife. They don't hold an edge well, so they don't stay sharp, and the point is prone to breaking off. However, it's a big knife, and if you hit somebody full force in the chest with it, there's just not a lot of fight that you can get back with that, unless you will something up from inside and want to fight back like an animal. Most people.
Okay. First of all, I got 2 points I want to make, and then I'm going to turn it to you, Ginger.
Okay.
The first point is I put a Rumble video on my community tab that showed a knife attack, a real knife attack, where an individual was sliced in the neck and he bled out instantly. It was like 3 seconds, if that. So if y'all want to go and watch that gore, you're more than welcome to. So the second part is, as far as the K-bar knife, we don't really know if that was the knife used, but based on what he just said about it, it could make sense if that knife was used, because he said it dulls quickly and sometimes the tip break off, like with any knife. If you're gonna hit bone or something like that, um, based on how the knife is built, or if it's an old version of the knife. Let's say that the knife was used in back in the time of the Vietnam War or something, if that was the knife used, or if it was a brand new knife that was ordered, or it was bought at a knife show or anything like that, it has obviously a lot to do with the durability of the knife. So what do you think, Ginger?
Yeah, I'm not really, like an expert on knives, but
Uh-huh.
I did look into a case once. Have you ever heard of oh gosh, I'm just trying to think of the Ketty murders
Mm,
in
refresh
out of
my memory.
Ketty murders out of California back in like 1982, maybe 1983, where the mom Sue was murdered. She and her son, they were all stabbed to death. Somebody
Okay.
came into the home and stabbed them and used like an actual kitchen knife. Did
Okay.
you? And the kitchen knife actually like bent. The Ketty murders is a huge like crime. It's very, very popular. I mean, I'm surprised that you haven't heard of that. You said you're in Texas?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, this particular crime happened many years ago. But in regards to the knife, situation, I don't know. Um, I don't really know. I don't really think a K-bar knife was used in this case.
Okay.
And one of the reasons I say that is just, again, it's more like feelings. It's more speculation. It's more like, do you remember when the news came out and they were talking about the dog Buddy that was skinned alive, and the bunny?
Mm-hmm.
I thought about that, and I thought, well, I wonder what kind of knife they used, or I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, as far as the knife, I believe that, or it's my opinion, I need to learn to start saying that. It's my opinion that
Mm,
it could have been a K bar, or it could have been a derivative of a knife that was actually like a K bar, or even possibly a machete. I mean, I know a
yeah,
machete's huge, but they have different variations. I mean, they're different sizes. It's not necessarily the long blade that many people buy. I mean, I have a machete in my truck, and for hunting purposes. Okay, so y'all don't freak out. Call me a serial killer or anything like that. Um, but there's different types of knives, and there's also a knife that I was watching um from this guy, and it's made by K-Bar, and it has like a curved claw to it, and it's only probably about six, not even 6 inches. I would say like 4 inches long, but it has a claw to it, and you hold it in your hand, and you're able to just kind of dig into the person. And I know this is very very graphic, but we're all adults here, and that type of knife, and I'll find a picture for the next Idaho video that I do, or a video. There is a whole video on K-bar on my in my library that give the history, that shows the knives and everything else. And there's actually videos on in my library that people have demonstrated the strength of the K-bar. You know, they show the K-bar knife being put through various tests. So if you want to go into my library and watch some of those, you're more than welcome. But the thing that addresses this situation is the severity of the knife wound, because the coroner said they were not. A lot of them were not stabbed; they were deep gouges that were kind of ripped out. And
Mm-hmm.
that is very vicious. That is very 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 vicious attack on anybody, whether it be an animal, whether it be a human, whether, and as far as the dog Buddy and the other thing, there was a rabbit, right? I think. Um
Yeah, that's
I
what I
think
heard. That's
I
what I
think
thought. Yeah.
the owner stated that Buddy was kind of filleted.
Yeah.
I don't know why they used that wording, and I don't even want to imagine why they used that wording. But it would have been if they would have said, they skinned him, but they said he was, his fur was taken all over his body, but his head and his little paws. So that's just a very viciousness. That's just a vicious attack in itself, also. And if you remember during these
Absolutely.
times when these things were coming out, we also heard of coyotes being killed and dropped at the doorsteps of the frat houses. The individual had to clean it up. He was, there was a report taken, obviously, or maybe there wasn't, because Moscow obviously doesn't take a lot of reports. But the police were called, and that's no dig at them. Just looking at their police blotter, you can see that no report taken, no report taken. I hope they've gotten better at that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I thought that was like, wow. You know, I saw that too with the fraternity kids, and the coyotes. I thought, oh my gosh, that is so incredibly scary. Like,
Yeah.
why would you want to even send, like, your child, to school? You send your child away to school, and things like this happen. It's just, it is mind-boggling to me. I just can't even imagine. Everybody's mind goes one way, especially as parents. You try not to be terrified, because then, but this case, in regards to, like, like the topic that we're on with the knife and with the gouging, I, am thinking that, like you said, the machete, and doesn't, when you have a K-bar, don't you have to have a license for that? Isn't there a law in the state of Idaho, especially, that you have to have isn't there a license that you have to carry a knife like that? Isn't that a military knife?
I don't particularly know. I know that. Oh, good point. I was gonna say here in Texas, you're allowed to have a 4-inch knife on your person. So anything bigger than that, then it is against the law. But I don't know in Idaho if there has to be something that differentiate between regular knives and something that is used for something like that. Because I know here in Texas, there's a lot of ranchers, there's a lot of oil field guys, there's a lot of hunters, there's a lot of fishermen, and you're allowed to have a 4-inch knife on your person, so it's no big deal to see somebody with a knife on them. It's no
Right.
big deal. and even
In
guns at this point.
in
20,
4 inches, like, are you talking about like a pocket knife, right?
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
but what about like an actual hunting knife? Is that legal?
I believe as long as you have it where you can't reach it, kind of like the gun, I believe that if you're using it for hunting purposes, it needs to be strapped in an area where you just can't reach it, like right next to you. You know, if it's under the seat or if it's in the glove box or something where you have to actually stop to reach it, I think you're okay. But as far as,
Okay,
carrying it on your person, I don't think anywhere it's okay for to do that. But I could be wrong, because
right,
I'm not above being wrong, and that's one thing that that I pride myself in is, I don't know everything. So, I learn every day from people. As long as it's factual, I'll listen to it. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
so that's a little bit about the knife, and he was describing a lot of that. So let's get back to the video.
Okay,
People, when they're hit with that much of a trauma to their chest or face, it's going to be the same as if I held you underwater. You're going to struggle, but if I can put some pressure on you, you're going to succumb to whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Jesus. Caleb, any questions?
Yeah, who do you think was was there one specific person that was the target in the house that you've kind of figured out, or was it all four of them? Was it just someone in general, or do they have any information on that yet? Was it one specific one of the women?
Well, we know, I think they know where he kind of rolled in and started. I believe he started upstairs, but I'm not comfortable saying that. All these other analysts are going out there and they're saying, oh, he definitely targeted, Kaylee, or they found the knife sheath on Maddie, so maybe she was the target. But I don't know, with a person like this who he stalked that neighborhood 12 times before this night, so he was obviously interested in that neighborhood. He was obviously interested in that house. So I think that is something that will be determined down the road. And there's a lot of things they can do to determine that, like what's the severity of the attacks, because it's going to get less and less. It's a very exhausting thing to kill this many people with a knife. And but had he just gone in and the first person he encountered was Kaylee, for instance, and he attacked her, it wasn't necessarily a target. He just saw girls in there. She's going to have the most lethal wounds. So there may be something that comes out in his phone records that show that he was in the location of one or two of these people. And that is what will most likely lead them to determine who he was targeting, not the severity of the attack on the people inside the rooms.
And he had been around this house a couple times before, right? Like this is for some reason a target 12 times before. Yeah.
12 times. Yeah. So
Okay. We have a new member to the panel. Her name is Amicus Curiae. That is a criminal justice term, if y'all don't know that. Hey, Amicus, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm great. I've seen some of your videos. I've actually went to your page and seen some of your stuff. Great work. Great work.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
No problem. Have you been listening to what we've been talking about and what the individual on the video has been talking about? Do you have any insight on that?
I do a little bit, yeah. So, something that was mentioned was, having a license in order to have a K-bar knife. And considering, well, first off, I just have to point out that, like, I am military. I'm in the Air Force for the United States. And I have been issued military weapons before, and I still currently have them. Pretty much anyone who has deployed at least to like a hazardous area will get these weapons. And so they're really not hard to come by. And so I understand that there may be laws in order to carry these weapons or not carry, I'm sorry, in order to buy these weapons. but yeah, like I said, they're really not hard to come by. I feel like most people have some sort of military member in their family, and it wouldn't really be hard to come by something that was issued. Like, especially in my case, I have like a ton of Gerber knives, for example, but the Marines, I know they get K-bars. So that was just something I had to point out there. Like, if it isn't legal in order to buy them, they're really easy to purchase, or not purchase, to have in Idaho or anywhere really.
Okay. So, have you been listening to the part about the injuries to the 4 victims? What's your take on it being a K-bar or another type of knife?
I feel like when you look at the PCA, it does say that, it came from a sharp force injury or whatever it said. I'd have to pull it up to see the exact details. So they don't actually specify what weapon they think was used. So that's kind of telling, in my opinion. But given the fact that they found a knife sheath there, and I can't imagine that any of these victims had that knife sheath, or I'm sorry, not that knife sheath, that knife with them, I feel like, I don't know, it's kind of telling, in my opinion, that it's probably that.
Okay. So let me ask you this question. So you brought up an interesting statement there. If it would have been one of the victims' knives, would it have been more feasible that knife would have been found maybe under the bed, under a pillow, maybe somewhere in that room? Possibly that knife could have been found if the individual who committed these crimes brought their own knife in, right?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that there would be some, especially early on in the case, because early on in the case, I feel like we heard a lot of speculation that actually seemed a little bit more poignant, like a little bit more like directly related to these victims. One of those examples is, the 4chan post and stuff like that. And so I feel like if one of these victims actually had a K-bar knife and people knew that they had a K-bar knife, it probably would have gotten broadened up, let alone it would have been pointed out that, I don't know, that this weapon was within the house or something like that.
Okay.
I feel like a lot of the information that came out very early on in this case was more interesting to me than the stuff that's come out later on.
Okay, thank you so much for your commentary there. Ginger, do you have any follow up to that now that you've heard her take on that? Do you want to add or?
Sure. Well, thank you for your thoughts on that. The gouging, yes, I'm thinking no, that this definitely, that the sheath, had been planted for sure. That is truly my opinion. I'm also believing, because you can't really, after what they said about the PCA, I just truly believe that it's not reliable. And that is strictly my opinion. I also am thinking that the gouges are more, definitely personal. Definitely, like, I just think if it was somebody that, like the 4chan, like the frat boys,
Mm-hmm.
I just think, like we had talked about in the initial, the beginning of this show, is what kind of minds do would these kids have to have in order to commit this crime? That's why I believe in my heart of hearts that this is definitely like more, cartel, like more upper, because like you'd almost have to be completely psychopathic to commit something like this. I mean, gouges to me is more like, you know, maybe possibly, I don't want to say this for sure because this is just strictly my opinion. Please don't hate me for saying this, but I'm almost like looking at, you know, organ selling, you know, something like that. Like, this is like where my mind is going with this, because gouges is huge. It's like, it's not just regular stabbing. It's not like, you know, did you hear how many times, Kaylee? Of course, that is speculation because that isn't anything. We don't know the autopsies of these kids. You know,
Right.
we haven't heard exactly, you know, we don't know what their bodies, you know, what they look like. We didn't even see any photos. So gouges to me just seems so overkill. You know,
Right.
like overkill, over the top, like ridiculous.
Well,
But then
that
there's
makes,
kind of, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I feel like you also have to look at the weapon that was potentially used, right? So a K-bar knife, that weapon is made to kill people. I mean, that's a
True.
specific reason. So even if the killer wasn't intending to, you know, gouge these kids, it could have just been from strength alone that's what happened. But
That's true.
but I do agree that it was personal, you know, because when we look at Ethan's wounds that he had, I mean, slashing someone's neck is pretty it's pretty personal, especially when you compare it to the other wounds and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
I forgot the next point I was going to get at, but hopefully it'll come back to me.
Well, that's fine. It happens once you get up here. Your mind just goes crazy. Well, I appreciate y'all's thoughts. Let's continue on. I wanted to show this picture of the knife sheath, and you can tell how they're swabbing it for DNA. I've always been confused if the trace DNA came from the top of the knife sheath like that, or if it came from the bottom, the button part. I know that I've read where it came from. Um, so do y'all remember what part it came from?
From the bottom of the button, the snap.
Okay, the snap. That's what I thought, but I wasn't certain, you know. So
Yeah.
that's why I asked. So what's your thoughts on that? I mean, how do you think that one piece of trace evidence, and I'm going to call it evidence because that's what it is, landed on that button? Any thoughts?
I feel like it's kind of convenient. It's like
Okay.
if you were going to touch any part of this sheath, right? Like if you were to be the killer that used it, it's kind of, this is something I've kind of always thought is like, why find it like directly on the button? It's not like you don't touch every other part of it. So I've always kind of thought it was convenient and kind of humorous to me to read in there that, you know, oh, this little piece of DNA that they only have a 10 what is it called? A 10-part DNA analysis on it. It just so happens to be on the part that would be like the most incriminating in a sense. So yeah, I just think it's kind of funny.
Okay.
For sure. No, that's a great point. I agree with her too, because I'm like, out of the entire knife sheath, that's where like the DNA is. I mean, like, I don't know. That's crazy to me too.
Okay. Well, we have another guest up here. We have Kay, or Carla number one, as you guys knew her as last night. Carla, we have Amicus and we have Ginger up here. Amicus is. Did you say you were current military or past?
I'm current.
Okay. Well, Kay was in the military as well. And so if you guys want to say hi while I pull up this video and, you know,
Hi guys.
pleasantries.
Hi,
It's
Kay.
good to have you guys. Awesome to meet you.
Well, nice to meet you guys.
You too.
Prior
Well,
service, what branch were you?
Me, I was in the Army. I served in the Army for 5 years active duty.
I'm Air Force. You know I have to talk shit on that, right?
Yeah, you better be careful on that. We're not gonna go there. This ain't the time nor the show. We're not gonna do that.
I'm totally kidding, Kay.
hey, we're gonna be civil. We're gonna be civil unless y'all come on camera and want to, like, no.
I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding. It's kind of a known rivalry between us.
Yeah. Kay, have you been listening at all to what we've been talking about? Really quickly, I'm gonna put you up to speed. We're going over the second part of the video of the dark triad, which I explained it earlier, or it was explained in the video about narcissism, Machiavellism, and psychopaths or psychopathy. So, and then this individual in the middle, he is a Navy SEAL, ex FBI, and he was talking about Brian Koberger and the personality traits in this interview. This interview was done on 1/6/2023. So he's breaking down the perp to Dr. Drew, and they're asking him questions. So we got to the part of the knife, the K-bar knife. Believe that, based on your perception, whether it was the K-bar knife or it could have been something else that caused a wound to these victims.
Well, I mean, I think it was that the knife. I mean, because okay, so here's my take on it, right? The whole knife thing. I did. How can I explain this in a very fast way? We know what we would call environmental ignorance on his part, right? Because when he was stalking, or we think that he was stalking, he knew where the two girls worked at that Mad Greek place. And then he goes and he, very quickly, we could speculate that he was there. They're saying that he never was there, but he was there. But that's where Maddie and that Zaina girl worked at, right? Okay, so if you think about it, he's following these girls, right? So then you would get to the opportunity, we fast forward, and he's going to go in and he's going to kill him, and he's got this knife. Okay, now what happened when I say environmental ignorance, what I mean by that is that he didn't count on the fact that there was a lot of things were going to shift about that night, which was one, they had just had a game, people were up late that night, so the environment itself was different. Plus, he didn't count on the fact of all of the cameras and everything. So whenever he's walking in and he's encountering an environment in which he thought he already knew, but he didn't know, because there was people there that, the way the positioning of everything, he got messy, and I think that's what, led to the knife, led to the droppings, led to what was it that they found that had to do with that knife? The Moscow knife? I can't remember, but I mean, that's just my take on it. I think he just got sloppy. I think he got sloppy there, because he didn't encounter that. Because I mean, when we know he went from a university that was a very small university to a very big university, he underestimated a lot of things. One, he underestimated, the number of cameras that were going to be around. Two, he's driving back and forth, three times that cameras had seen him on the night of, and I think he was just kind of startled by it all and was a little bit sloppy.
Okay. Well, let's continue. Go ahead.
So the only part that I have an issue with, because I just don't want to spread misinformation, is that there was no, unless you know something that I don't know, there was no information that says that he went to the Greek cafe, that he was stalking them per se.
Yeah,
Could you
you're right about
explain
that.
to me about that, sir?
Yeah, you're right. You're right about that because they did interview.
wasn't
So
stalking
they
them.
did interview. They did interview the owner of the Mad Greek, right? And the guy that the owner or whatever said no. He has never been here. He has never been here. Okay, but now let's stop and think about it. Total speculation here. Okay, this part is fixing to be total speculation. But let's stop and think about it. It's reported that he's vegan, right? So could there have been a possibility that he could have gone there? Does the owner know for certain back and forth? Now, if you think about it, if you're the owner of a restaurant, you may have seen this guy in your restaurant maybe once or twice, right? But if you say that, imagine what's going to happen to your business. Even if you say, hey, I saw the guy once or twice, and not saying that he was there repeatedly, you just said once or twice. It's to the integrity of that owner to lose his integrity and say, hey, he was never here. That didn't happen. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah, but
speculating
that's from the get-go, though. That's a cop-out, because that's like saying that I went to the McDonald's on the corner of my neighborhood because I eat meat. Like you can't really say that this guy is lying, that this guy potentially saw him and is just not saying it because he doesn't want to hurt his business. But the basis of what people are speculating is because Brian Koberger's a vegan, and that's something that's unconventional to a lot of people.
Yeah, and for certain, it's total speculation, right? I mean, and for the thing too that we found, right? Like in my mind, right? Okay, because where else would he have gone that he would have encountered both two victims of the same household? Where could that have been likely? One of the places, many places, perhaps some audience members may think, but one place that would have been in common for both of them was the Mad Greek, right?
But you're already having confirmation bias. You're already having confirmation bias. You're saying Brian Koberger did it, so where would he encounter these victims? That's confirmation bias. You're saying, where could he have encountered these victims? It had to have been the Mad Greek. You're already setting up a plot line for that.
Okay. Let's kind of reel it back, because we're going down another rabbit hole right here. Both of y'all are great at what you're saying. Just try to agree to disagree, okay?
Well, no, I think it's a healthy debate, right? I think
exactly. But the videos I'm trying to show, it's like so long, and I'm trying to get through it.
I'm sorry. Well, that wasn't brought up to me initially, but if you want to finish the video, of course.
Yeah. Let me play a little bit more, and then you guys can continue. We all can continue our discussion on the video, and if y'all, I want to hear what you got to say. I'm not trying to cut either one of y'all off, because y'all have a very healthy discussion going on, and I like that. I'm just trying to get through this video.
Okay.
Really quickly. Okay. Thank you.
I just wanted to toss out there that it's actually commendable that you won't jump to these conclusions, because one of the worst parts about this whole case was the fact that a lot of these internet sleuths and the true crime people, a lot of people jumped the gun on this, and they were all making assumptions, and they were accusing people who turned out to have nothing to do with it. And on top of that, a lot of people were accusing the local police department of being inept and mishandling this. And then when the documents came out just like a few days ago, everyone had to kind of pull back on that all of a sudden whenever they realized, oh, the cops have been working on this the whole time. It's just the fact that they've been doing a good job by not leaking all of these documents out to the press. They've actually been doing 10 times as good of a job as people were imagining. So I'm commendable for you not making guesses on that like the others were doing.
I'll tell you something. These internet sleuths, which we call them internet sleuths, they're no different than QAnon people who jump on some type of a weird groupthink theory. And if you go and look at the stuff that they write, they'll argue with me. I go on Twitter and I take part in the dialogue quite a bit on social media, but people will say, you know, I don't think it's that way. And I say, well, you know, you've never been trained to kill. So it's probably, it happened in this way, this type of attack with a knife. And I was saying this before and how he was doing it. And they just don't even care. It'd be like them telling, you know, Dr. Drew that it's a patient saying, well, I don't think you know what you're talking about. You know, you're just because you have a, you know,
Happens all the time.
Trust me, it happens all the time, and all day long on Twitter.
Yep.
All day long on Twitter and in real life, it happens. And that's how patients treat their doctors. But what do you mean by how he used the knife? Tell me about that.
Well, like I was saying that on Twitter, I came out and said a couple things, and I said that in order to be efficient at killing, you have to, with a knife, you have to kill with a knife, and in order to understand I don't remember exactly what it was, but that was basically the gist of it, right? So people just instantly started jumping on the bandwagon saying that you don't have to train to kill with a knife. There's been instances where wives or somebody has killed somebody with a knife. And so trying to help them understand that systematically killing multiple people, along with the stalking that he did, the surveillance that he did, and getting in there, all this stuff takes training to be able to get there and effectively do this. And also psychologically and dealing with the adrenaline dump. This type of stuff takes training, and they just don't want to hear that. They think that a lot of people think that he just did this, that he was following Kaylee and the other people were in the house, or that he knew one of the roommates and that let him in there. And there's no evidence.
Okay, let me stop it right there, because I'm glad I have you two up here. All three of y'all actually, but the ones that are, you know, have been in the military and actively been trained to defend yourself first and foremost, correct? Am I correct on that, both of you? Oh, you
I'm
are
sorry,
muted.
what was what you said?
You are
I
muted.
defended myself?
Oh, sorry. I had muted myself because I didn't want there to be background noise while
You're fine.
everyone was trying to.
And Ginger, if you have any kind of self-defense or any kind of training to defend yourself?
No. I mean, no, absolutely not, actually.
So these other two, you two, Amicus and Kay, y'all been trained to defend yourself, even if it means mortally wounding somebody, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So this individual on panel said, on the video said, you wouldn't know what that's like unless you haven't been trained how to do that. Is that a correct statement, or do you think he's embellishing that?
Well,
It kind of depends. It really depends on your level of training. I feel like there's I don't know. There's kind of like, you can only be as trained as you can be trained, in a sense, when it comes to fighting someone hands on hand. But yeah, I guess so.
Okay, so if
I mean,
let's take Brian's name and let's take him out of the equation for the rest of the night. Okay, let's just think that, you know, there's not a person of interest yet, and we're going along the lines of understanding this individual. So, in your opinion, on what you've heard and what you've read about the killings, would this person have been military? Could it have been a military-minded person? Could it have been because
no.
the training is different. Correct?
No, it's not going to be military. It's not going to be military because, I mean, I'm only going to speak to the training that I received. So you've got two different branches of the military up here, right? So I'm not going to speak to what Air Force does or doesn't do because I was not in the Air Force. I was in the Army. So during the training for Army, okay, and this is Army, I'm not talking about any other branch because I was not a part of any other branch but the Army. So in the Army, while we have a level of training which is called, basic training, And that's basically where we're learning how to be, soldiers, and we're learning how to, some of it is going to be how to defend ourselves to a certain degree, of course, right? We're not training, they're not training us, the Army at least, with knives, okay? They're not training us with knives, for say, okay? They're training us how to shoot. Okay, now, we can get in there, we can shoot, I can shoot. Okay, so, whenever we're talking about this, that would be such a broad statement. No, would I think automatically that this was somebody who was in the military? Absolutely not, because I think somebody with the military, we're observers. We're trained to observe and know our surroundings, or at least for Army. Okay, I'm trained that way. I'm going to observe. So I don't know that, an Army, that a person with a military background would have made some of the mistakes, that he made.
Okay.
So I mean, that's just my given. I mean, we're trained to be soldiers. We're not trained to be assassins and killers in that sense. We're
Okay.
trained in a very specific way to be soldiers. I think a lot of the people who aren't affiliated with the military automatically assume that military people, we're trained assassins. We're not trained assassins. Now, there is different levels of training, right? Everybody gets their basic training, and then from there, you go on and you get your specialty training, versus if you want to be a Green Beret, if you want to be, a special forces, if you want to be, and you get more training, right? But the general military, unless you're going into those special training courses or that track, you're not I didn't get trained to go in there and kill people with, at high rates of speed. Like, that was not what I was trained for in the Army. Now, if I would have been a male and I would have gone for my Green Beret, if I would have gone in special forces, or, would I have then received some further in-depth training? Well, probably, but I was none of those things.
All right, Amicus, how about you? Discuss some of the training that you received regarding.
So while I do agree, because the job that I'm specifically in, I never had any direct combat training initially. I was, recruited into special tactics, and I actually went and I trained with Green Berets, something that you're probably familiar with, but 68 Whiskeys. But I trained with Green Berets, 68 Whiskeys, or PJs, and MARSOC, which is Marine Special Forces. And in those trainings, in which I was actually deployed and I was overseas in Africa, we definitely trained with knives. Like 100% we trained with knives. And
Okay.
the Marines were probably some of the most gruesome people I have ever met in my entire life. And this wasn't just one unit. I did a full 12-month long rotation out there with this, not just one MARSOC unit, it was 2 MARSOC units. And maybe this is something I'll eventually talk on my channel about, but the MARSOCs were not good people. They were despicable, to say the least. And that was coming from another Air Force member. And I'm not talking about despicable in the sense of any acts on, Americans or our allies and stuff like that. It was just the choices that they made were just disgusting. And so I really don't put it past anyone, especially Marine Special Forces, to do anything. And that's why, and I'm not saying that this is the case. I'm not saying that a Marine did this and it was Brent Kopaka or some shit like that. I'm really not. If anyone has watched my videos, I've already said that I do not agree with the Brent Kopaka theory. But I don't really put it past anything. Ginger, she had talked about earlier where she had said, I'm sorry if this seems crazy, my theory that I have.
There's nothing crazy. We're
And
all
yes, nothing is crazy, nothing. And therefore, if I'm going to believe that she could have a cartel theory, I could easily 100% believe that this was a Marine, if not some other armed forces. Really.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now Marty,
thank you
okay,
for
so
that.
let's put it into perspectives for everyone, okay? When I served, that was over 20 years ago. Okay. She's currently on active duty. The military has changed very much between when I served and a person currently serving. So, I mean, just to put it out there, okay? So, I'm not saying, I mean, if you had what would have been a little bit more fair into this discussion would have been if we would have been able to find someone on the Army side that's currently active duty, you
Right.
know, because then they would be a little bit more compatible to what she is saying. So, I mean, I want to say that for the chat, you know, and for the people that are not, you know, fully aware, because there's going to be some things that she's going to have a very strong viewpoint because she's went through it and is going through it, where I'm going to be like, nah, didn't happen when I was serving. But both points of view are relevant. It's just you've got to look at it in its totality. Two totally different branches of the military, two totally different times of being served, two totally different trainings. So basic training, how I encountered it, isn't going to be the same basic training that somebody is going to enter into today.
I 100% agree, because look at what you went through. You went through a time of people who were recovering from 9/11, and people were very like,
well, actually, I served during 9/11. Actually, 9/11 happened
yes,
under my belt. So
that's what I'm saying, is that you served during the time that people
Yeah.
were very much like pro-military and pro during the time of trying to rebuild this country. Since you've been in service, I imagine we have people who did the Las Vegas shooting and God, what was the other thing I was about to say? Like, it's been so much more detrimental towards the U.S. I feel like when it comes to the military than when you were in. So yes, we definitely went through a different time, and
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're saying.
Well, I like the diversity that we have up here. Ginger and I have, I'm assuming that Ginger had never served. I've never served, you know, so I love the diversity that we have up here. And I like the fact that we can all get along and, you know, put our opinions and thoughts out there, and we can still, you know, have a healthy debate, as you were saying, Amicus.
Absolutely.
Let's go on with the video a little more. I might have to do a part 3 on that. And if you guys are open to come on to the panel on the part 3, you're very welcome. I enjoy your level of thought process. Here we go.
Evidence of any of that stuff, but if you try to tell them otherwise, it doesn't matter if you were trained to kill or that you were an FBI investigator. They know more than you do, and it's
Of course.
the downside to this. I mean, the real downside to this is that media has taken multiple times where they've taken what internet sleuths have said and reported it as breaking news, and it turned out that it was nothing.
That is the new world landscape of media, which is somebody makes something up.
Okay,
A young girl, a friend of a friend. I didn't know this person, but they.
Hold on a second.
Perfect.
We have a super chat. We have from I've Got Words. They have a question.
And what was the question?
What is your opinion on the surviving roommate who didn't call police until much later?
So I personally know 3 people who have had not circumstance where somebody was killing, but in one instance, a friend of mine, when she was younger, thought she heard something outside of her window, and she curled up into the covers, and then she just sat there frozen. She didn't realize, but 5 hours had passed before she came out of that position. Another girl, I know that somebody broke into their house, and when they were standing in the living room, she actually, for some strange reason, ran towards them and into a corner and balled up in a corner. She doesn't know why. She did it, and she just stayed there. It freaked the the robber out so bad that he left. So, but in another case, a young girl, a friend of a friend, I didn't know this person, but they were in their sorority they were in, they were always talking about how she used to sleep with the covers pulled up over her head. And they're like, how do you do that? And it turns out when she was young, her and her family had been out. She came home and a guy came out of her closet, apparent home invasion, and he was hiding in her closet. And when she got in her bed, he came out of the closet and walked out of the house. And so since that point, she slept with her head under the covers, and she didn't tell anybody until the next morning. So, and even somebody who got kidnapped by Ted Bundy that survived him, she got away from him and never told anybody, even after it was in the news and she recognized him, and she could have probably stopped other murders. But it's this is a traumatic experience. I mean, this is something, I don't blame that girl. And I think she might have been intoxicated and she got frozen and went back in there and she didn't know, according to the affidavit, she didn't see the people getting murdered. So she probably thought the same thing. I'll go in there and hide and he'll go away. And she probably fell asleep or passed out.
Did she see the knife? Did he look like somebody who was actually in the process of doing something? I just read that she saw somebody in black with a bushy eyebrow, and that was it. And locked her door and went back in. I mean, people have this weird, I don't want to make waves kind of instinct. Like, I don't want to bother anybody. I don't want to bother the cops. I don't want to accuse somebody of something. You know, it's a weird instinct we have. And then you add this sort of bystander effect onto that, and then we just don't do much.
We even saw this to a different extent in the Vegas shooting. I think is an excellent example of this. You know, a guy starts shooting people with a gun, and a gun compared to a firecracker is totally different. But what did people assume? They assumed that it was fireworks. And so it's similar in the way that people are not programmed to think, oh, that person is in my house right now with a mask on. So when they see it, they are so traumatized that they freeze with fear. And that's why I wrote that book.
Yeah, I love your book, Sheep No More. I don't know how you, though, train or coach people up not to freeze. I mean, freeze is it's an old primitive survival instinct when there's nothing else left. And unfortunately, it doesn't work very well. It's not, it's sort of preparing for strike rather than preparing for fight.
Right. This is exactly because we're not prepared for it. So it doesn't take much. You can prepare yourself by forward thinking these things. Doesn't mean you're going to be paranoid or constantly looking behind your back, but thinking to yourself, how would I react in this situation? And I think if people just did that, I teach courses where I put people through an hour or 2 hours of all these different scenarios that I know they're going to fail. We do that for about 30 minutes where, for instance, you're in a coffee shop and a person with that's emotionally disturbed comes up and starts making a ruckus. What do you do? And so people will confront him or they'll do something. And so I will teach them to think their way through it and then put them back through similar circumstances, and then they're thinking their way through the process. And I think this is something that really needs to be taught to people on a wide scale.
Well, it's interesting.
I think
I've talked a little bit over the years, and me and my family were in a shooting at Luger Steakhouse in Brooklyn, and I was sort of shocked that I held it together as well as I did. But let's do this. Let's take a little break. Well, because it really is where this stuff. I think it's talking to guys like Johnson that I was.
Well,
able to
I was
kind of
thinking, like, if this guy had a gun, he would have taken out a classroom.
Oh yeah.
So let me get y'all's thoughts on that. What he said, the fight or flight response. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that. If you're familiar with that, you understand that whenever we're faced with adversity, most human beings, they go into that fight or flight response. And that's when the adrenaline's flowing. That's when the cortisol's flowing. That's when everything is preparing you to either fight or run. And that comes from the very primitive years of our existence when we were back fighting saber-toothed tigers, The unfortunate is, even to this day, 2024, we don't know the difference between an individual with a knife and a saber-toothed tiger, even though intellectually we do. our fight or flight response has been programmed from the very primitive portions of our lives, and we still react the same. So any reenactment or anything that you deal with that causes you stress that releases adrenaline or cortisol, your body automatically goes into fight or flight. So do you believe that Dylan could have potentially been in fight or flight? Let me start with Ginger.
Yes, if she had been there, if Dylan had actually truly been at the house, like she stated she was, then yes, I believe, because I myself have, been through trauma and have suffered, through, a major situation, and the whole flight or fight situation is, it's definitely a real thing. In this particular instance, in scenario, I guess to answer your question, yes, she very well could have, just not have been completely, she could have just been like scared out of her mind, and just went into her room, closed the door, locked the door, and laid down and fell asleep. I mean, I don't
Okay.
know how, I don't know how realistic that is, considering the home, the way that the home was built. And, I have questions about this because, in my opinion, and again, it's just speculation and it's just an opinion, because I don't know Dylan personally. I've never talked to her. I'm just going by what this piece of paper, this PCA states.
Right.
And, a lot of it isn't even factual. So, and another thing too, when Ellie, when law enforcement says that she saw somebody with bushy eyebrows, I'm like, that is so crazy to me. And so, like, who says that? That she didn't even say, oh, I saw, you know, a man, like, of color, or, who is Caucasian, or, how did she see his eyebrows? I don't know. I mean, but yes, to answer your question, yes, of course. She very, very, very well could have just, like I said, completely, she's young, that her age too, I'm sure she hasn't been through major traumatic instances in her own life to experience this. Maybe this is the first time.
Okay.
So yeah,
Let's
she could have been.
ask the panel guests. Amicus, you're next. Do you believe that she went into fight or flight during that frozen shock phase, or do you believe that possibly she could have been more coherent than was stated?
So it's kind of difficult because I do have my degree in psychology, and I do understand like how much trauma can vary, right? So there's a part of me that thinks that experiencing something that is essentially as random as it was, and having this quadruple murder happen in your house that seemingly nothing happens in, yes, that is obviously like petrifying. But something that I hit on in my video is that I don't really understand how. Okay, let me rewind a little bit. Sorry. So the next morning, when she supposedly knows, because this 911 call was made and it wasn't from Dill Morrison and all this stuff, or even if it was, because I know that none of that is like truly verified. At some point, you know that something is going on in the house, especially because according to the PCA, you hear, you know, people getting up in the middle of the night, you hear crying coming from your roommates' bedrooms, which arguably is not something like, even if you have a party going on every other night, you typically probably don't hear crying, especially from just one person. And you seemingly just go to sleep and you just ignore it. Now, if we're to believe that there's all this blood, there's so much blood that's coming out of this house that it's pouring out the sides of it, there's also that aspect too. I don't know. I feel like there's just too many parts of this story that just don't really add up to me, especially when you get up the next morning and you have someone else call on your behalf 911. This is what I hit on in my videos, is I feel like at some point you have to have your friend's best interest in mind. And so why would you call your friends over in order to call the police when you literally think that something is so wrong at this point that you didn't think before, that now you've decided, okay, I need to call someone, but it's not the police, it's your friends who arguably don't have any first responder knowledge. They don't have that that, you know, capability to handle that type of situation. That's the part that is weird to me. But I do understand the psychological aspect of it, where it's kind of like you really don't know how you would respond in that moment. It just doesn't negate the fact that it's kind of weird.
Okay, great insight. Great insight. Both of you women, great insight on that. Okay, last but not least.
Well, so we know we have the fight, flight, and freeze, right? So when we're talking about trauma, when we're talking about instant trauma, and that's kind of what happened, right? This was out of the ordinary. I agree that yes, none of us know how we would respond in a situation like that, seeing the horrific scenes that she probably saw. I think it is within the normal realm that the first person you're going to call, or the first people you're going to call, are going to be people that you know, because if you're in shock, which she was, I fully believe that she was in shock. You're going to call people because at that point, in that instance, in those moments, a person, her state of mind is her rationale, her brain is gone, in those moments. It's done, it's done. I mean, because she's in shock. She's in complete shock. So she froze. She didn't flee the scene, and she didn't fight because there was nobody there. She froze. So with that, she's going to make a phone call. Who do I call first? She's going to call people she knows first. I mean, it's within the realm of normality, so I mean, it's not, I don't question, that part about it all. Did she go into her fight or flight? Yeah, I think she just more or less froze in where she was,
Okay.
and that's kind of my take on it. I think you did a beautiful job on explaining what all that is. I mean, I don't think any of us on the panel would have gone against you, Marty. I mean, yeah, you're right.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Let me give you my take on it. Y'all want to hear my take?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. My take on this is based on, past experiences. So she was what, 20 years old? Dylan was 20?
Yes,
I
I think
believe she
so.
was 20. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we really don't know a lot about her upbringing. Some of the things that I've heard in other panels that I've been watching, just to get a little insight on that. One of the great channels that I watch is True Crime Design. I like her early videos on this case, and she's very insightful on some of the information that, if not all of the information that she puts forward. She doesn't put very many videos out anymore, but in the very beginning, she was very on point with this true crime design. Well, let me get back to that. The reason I brought that up is because she was describing Dylan's childhood in one of them and how she was raised, and she came from a good family, and there wasn't a lot of trauma. There wasn't a lot of dysfunction. There wasn't a lot of abandonment. There wasn't a lot of things like that going on in her family. So you would believe, based on your interpretation of psychological event that happened, as you grow up, unless you're exposed to traumatic events that you've had to overcome, the threshold becomes less and less on your fight or flight. You um you you don't want to, you don't position yourself to run so much. You become a fighter. You become a survivalist. You become a person that is able to be calm in the heat of battle, so to speak. And so the psychological effect becomes more and more reactive rather than um, shut down, if that makes sense at all. So, based on that, I would believe that Dylan might have froze. She would have had that not fight instinct in her unless she had experienced a lot of trauma in her life that conditioned her to go past that frozen shock phase, as they say, and into I'm going to call the police. I'm going to prepare a weapon of sort in case he comes in here. I'm going to barricade myself until I have to take him on, or this or that or the other. And the same thing with Bethany. So that's my take on that. What do y'all think? Do you agree or disagree? You can be both. And one more thing before you answer, guys. I I want to give you the option to hit the dislike button if you don't like the streams, any of them. I've never said that, but I've always thought it when I'm looking back on the on the likes or the comments and stuff, because I'm commenting back. If you don't like the stream, you're more than welcome to hit the dislike button. There is a dislike button there, so you have that opportunity as well. So based on what I just said, Kay, you or Ginger? Ginger, you want to go first, or you want Kay to go first? Do you
I mean,
believe?
I'll go. I'll go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's another take to this, right? And one, which I think, you described everything very beautifully. But one thing that I would add to that, as if for everybody to ponder, is, we know at what age does our brain is fully grown, meaning fully developed. We know that to be about the age of 22. What are the last things that are developing in our brains? Which part of the brain? And that's going to be the frontal lobes up here at the front, and that's where our rationale is. That's where we think, in the future, we're thinking ahead. So she was 20. So developmentally, her brain wasn't developed all the way through, right? So we're looking at it from when we give our opinions, we're giving on our opinions based upon what we know, but we are all older than 22 years old, right? So our rationale and our brains have already fully developed. So when we put it into perspective and you start to think about the development, where was she in her development? Now versus now put that into what circumstances she found herself in, you can understand a lot of what probably happened,
Yeah.
because we
Exactly.
can't really, what I'm saying. I mean, it's just food for thought, but because we don't know what her upbringing was, we don't know what her childhood, what she experienced, but we do know, we can focus on what we do know. And we do know that her brain scientifically was not developed to what we would say full. Because I mean, the last organ to develop it within a human is going to be the brain, and that takes till you're 22 years old. We know that, so You know, I mean, that's just kind of, you know, my food for thought. You know, whenever we place, you know, young adults or in, you know, in situations that are horrible, you can't expect them to react in the same way as a full adult is going to react. And what I mean by adult is, I mean, someone whose brain is fully matured, is fully grown, it's reached its capacity. You know, I mean, we can't. That's comparing apples and oranges.
Yes, thank you so much. Ginger?
You know, I absolutely agree with Kay. I mean, she's absolutely right. We really cannot speculate even on that because her brain truly, you know, is not completely fully developed. We don't know the background of her childhood. We don't know, you know, her family, the dynamic of what she grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, environmentally, we don't know that whole, you know, these are really, really good thoughts, you know, on this. And actually, honestly, I've never heard anybody ever really talk about this. You know, everybody just kind of went right to, you know, they could not believe that she didn't call, you know, police for 8 hours. But given the circumstances and all, it completely makes sense when you put it into that kind of perspective. That's
Okay.
just my opinion. So I have to agree with what Kay said.
Okay. Amicus, you have any follow up, or are you good with your original statement? Or
Yeah, no, I'm good with my original.
okay, good deal. Then let's continue on a little bit more with the video. Y'all still good, or y'all running low with time? Because my lives are usually long. So if y'all are still good, just let me know, you know, if you're getting to a point where, you know, you need to go or something, and I understand it totally. Okay? Any of y'all.
Gage, I got to in about maybe about 15.
Okay. Well, just let me know. Kind of wave
Okay.
at me or something, and we'll let the chat know that you're stepping down. And we put your link of your channel, yours and Amicus channels on the chat. So hopefully people go and check out your channels and give you a sub to, you know, to have
That's
a different
awesome.
perspective, to have a different perspective. Let's see what the rest of the video has to say.
Yeah.
But,
Well,
but he went for a bunch of drunk kids at 4 a.m.
Wouldn't
Like,
satisfy him the
He's
same
not.
way.
I will
Yeah,
say this
maybe
before you
not.
take your break. I'll say this before you take your break. I don't think he's the type of guy who would go into a school even if you gave him a gun. That he's not. He doesn't want to
Yeah.
get caught.
Yeah. It feels more like personal domination. Like he needs to be able to see the person, each person, and watch what he does. All right, and then we'll maybe take a couple calls too. So let's get right back with Jonathan Gilliam after this. Genucel has so many products that Susan and I love. Their XV moisturizer.
Okay, let's fast
push it up into the window to protect this pile of people that was behind me. And I thought I was sort of surprised. That's the fight. That's the fight.
I love it.
But I also remember that I've been taught by you and others that
keep going, Doctor.
That you lose your fine motor coordination in these extreme circumstances. So hitting, phone buttons and stuff is a tall order.
Yeah, but you could take you. That's exactly right. You'll be so shaken up you can't dial a phone. But if somebody confronts you, you will be able to fight with a ferocity that you didn't even know you had. And so, but if you don't think your way through it, what takes over? You get frozen, or like people who have tried to hide. I think there was a mall in Kenya where people tried to hide, and the robbers were just coming up and shooting them. They weren't even in a position to hide. They were like literally just crouched up in a corner, and that's not going to save them. We saw it in Florida. There was a guy.
That was what I did behind a curtain. It wouldn't have done me any good. If they shot the curtain,
concealment.
12 of us would have died.
That's concealment.
But yeah, we got that part right.
It was okay, or something like that, where he got himself in a situation where he had to do this to get out of it. He was like, he had his laser beams on.
Let's
And-
let's ask if that
I'm
happens.
sorry.
Is that a
Who
kind
was
of
that?
it's Jonathan Gilliam. Let's get him
Okay.
to respond because he studies these people. Is there a
Right.
stalking version of this? Just sort of fighting their way out of being caught, or that doesn't fit for me quite right.
Well, here's what you have to realize: that the people who do mass shootings tend to be people who have a dominant. They have a dominance desire. They want to dominate people. Perhaps there are people who are smaller, or were in the case of incels, that's involuntary celibate. You're seeing that's another online thing that's growing for some strange reason. And so a lot of these people, their desire is to be seen as dominant, right? Not necessarily to kill, but their desire becomes so overwhelming that they go out and will perform something like shooting up a school or a parade, or it doesn't have to be a shooting. They go in and do a knife attack, but kill or injure 20 people in a room. So they have a desire to be dominant and to be seen as dominant. Now, you take a guy like this, he has a very similar desire, but it's not based on necessarily on the fact that he couldn't get a date, or the fact that he is a smaller or has been bullied by his coworkers. This guy has developed a desire that can only be satiated through the hunt, and he doesn't want to get caught. He wants to be able to fulfill that and then continue to fulfill that. Whereas one group of people, their whole blaze of glory is the end all of their satiation. This guy, to continue to do these things methodically, that's where the stalking comes in, because stalking can for a while be all he needs to be satiated.
Okay, we're going to stop it right there, and I have some questions for the guests because I'd like to hear each and every one of your thoughts on this. I have like 4 questions for each and every one of you. And I know that, first and foremost, I want to say that I know that in the court hearing, the stalking was debunked. If you believe differently, be sure to say, what you believe on that. But I want to ask you guys, do you believe he was an incel, or the individual that did this? Because we took Brian out of the equation, okay? So the individual that did this, could he have possibly been an incel based on your definition of what an incel is? We'll start with Kay this time, and then we'll go to Amicus and then to Ginger.
Okay. Say it again.
Okay, we're taking Brian out of the equation. Based on the information that we know about these killings, could this person, in your mind, possibly been an incel?
I don't know. I don't define for me what that means. What do you think it means?
Okay, incel, celibate is a new, it's a fairly new phenomenon that was kind of created by Elliot Rodger. It's a group of men and now women with a lot of other variations in the mix. That they believe that there's only certain people that would give or would get affection, love, sex, any of their needs, and they're usually addressed as Stacy's and Chad's, which would be kind of like the upper level in their mind. They're lower than these individuals, so they develop an extreme hatred because they believe that they would never be able to match that sense of natural order, so to speak. So that's where the belief of the incel would come from.
Well, that's kind of hard to answer, right? Because if we're taking him out of the equation and we're just looking at a crime scene, like that would be a little difficult.
Well, we're looking.
To know, but
Well, do you believe it was a? I'm gonna get to that point, but at this point, if you were gonna put another person in there, would it be a male or a female in your eyes, or could it be both?
I'm gonna put a male in there.
Okay.
I'm gonna definitely put a male in there just because statistically, you know, whenever we think about females, typically, but not always, you know, they don't do crimes like this. Now, another reason why I would, well, for that reason, but it's hard for me to think about it because I know a little bit about him. You know, I know that in his senior year, they're saying that in his senior year of high school, right, that was the year where he became the bully instead of being bullied, right? And there was some drug addiction in his senior year. You know, we know that, you know, that was going on. But so I'm more or less leaning on the fact that, you know, of the term, you know, like kind of having aggressive fantasies over what started off as an aggressive fantasy probably for him, my opinion, venture to say, you know, and then over time that became a motive for behavior. So I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
you know,
Amicus, you want to go?
Well, if we're just to get back to like the main point of it, and like incel. So incel stands for involuntarily celibate. So it's not necessarily like a group of people that have like necessarily like, I don't know, made like a group of themselves. It's people who cannot have sex, and that it's not that they don't choose to, it's that they can't. And so it's become this big thing of anger towards women, and this is seen through the Santa Barbara murders that happened back in what was it, 2015. It was a start of like Papa Rogers and shit like that.
Well, it was Elliot Rogers.
Elliot Rogers. There we go.
Yeah.
Yes, I was like trying to remember what his name was. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it was like one of the first things that, yeah, one of like Reddit or whatever, 4chan, I'm sorry, whatever it was that kind of started that whole movement. And so when I look at Brian Koberger and kind of fitting into that incel theory, he was a very popular guy when it came to women. And I feel like something that kind of solidifies that for me is Howard Blum or Bloom, whatever the fuck. He very openly hates Brian Koberger. I mean, not hates him. That's a little bit presumptuous, but he very openly does not support Brian Koberger, and he still says within his book that Brian Koberger was receiving a lot of female attention and stuff like that. And so even from a accuser's perspective, Brian Koberger did not have trouble with women, like by any means. Even so much to say as the fact that like he had a prior girlfriend who eventually died because of her addictions and stuff like that. So I just don't really buy into this incel theory. As far as like incel theory goes by like definition, right? Like he was clearly getting women. So I don't think, long story short, I don't think that he's an incel.
Okay. Ginger?
Yeah, I don't really buy into that theory either because I don't think and you know, taking Koberger out of, you know, the mix in this and with this crime, no, I don't think incel actually fits. That's just,
And the only reason that I said take him out of the equation is to give the individuals who believe he's innocent that theory. You get what I'm saying? So by taking him out of the equation would give them the opportunity to see another side of it. Like if it's not him, then who is it? What
Well,
type
right.
of individual? What type of individual? Because at a particular point, whether he's guilty or whether he's innocent, there's still a killer out there. If you believe that he's innocent, well, what type of individual could have done this? If you're going to go along the lines of wanting to believe that deeply, then surely you have thought further down the line, okay, well, if it's not him, somebody did it.
Right.
They're deceased. Somebody murdered them. So if it wasn't him in your mind, then who?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, that is the question. Like, what kind of person does this? Terrible massacre atrocity. Like, this is, you and, like you said earlier, you and I aren't out doing anything like this. And,
Right.
So absolutely. Yes. Does the incel theory actually fit? It could. It could, and I wondered too if there was any essay involved, with the girls. So,
And that's one of the main points that people hopped on very early on, that the fact that we've been told that there was no essay. So if there was no essay, that would mean that a guy who wasn't very comfortable with that or had never gotten that would have just been so angry at a female that he killed him because of the anger of not being able to get that.
yeah.
I mean, just even saying that out loud it doesn't register in my mind, but saying that out loud, just, y'all get what I mean, right?
Could I add something here?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is just because this is something that's kind of eating away at me for like a very long time. But you don't need to have an answer. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like everyone is like, and this is something that I've dealt with because I have been quote unquote a pro burger for so long. I'm not a pro burger. I'm actually a very unbiased person. I feel like that's pretty apparent with my channel. But something that I've dealt with ever since this case started, so 19, 20 months ago, like I've tried to explain to people that you don't always have to have an answer, especially because from very early on, even though it took 6-7 weeks to find Brian Koberger, we have been questioning who this person is, who this possibly could be. And then when they found that person and they set their eyes on this person, that's all we've been told. I think for the first 2 months, I truly believed that it was Brian Koberger. I was like, how could it not be? This is what prosecution, this is what law enforcement, whoever has been telling me. But when you don't see the details of this case and you don't see all the things that go on behind the scenes, it's hard to form any conclusions that are not the thing that has been given to you. So I don't know. I feel like when people are like, oh, we have to form this theory about why Brian Koberger did it and why this happened. I mean, look at Ted Bundy, for example, right? The only thing that really tied his cases together was that he liked women.
Right.
I mean, so in my opinion, it's just so funny to me when people are like, well, we have to form this incel theory and we have to form this theory about why this person would target this house. Was it drugs? I'm not saying that it wasn't drugs. Let me just rephrase there. I'm not saying that that's not the case. I think that we are doing a very good job as YouTubers in trying to figure it out, because I think we live in an age where we have all of this stuff accessible to us. But I think it just comes down to I don't know. I don't know if I'm making my point here clear, because I feel like I'm kind of going on a tangent, but we don't really have to have a reason other than the things that we see on the internet. There are things that are far less incriminating in past cases than the things that we've seen in this case. aspect.
Okay.
Well, I think that we know of, right? I mean, I think that from what we know of, I mean, because this town that this happened in is a very, and in the area that it happened in, you know, there's going to be a lot of camera footage. You know, I mean, and we already have seen some, I mean, but I really feel like there's going to probably be more coming. And that's kind of like what kind of where I was going back with to that, you know, environmental ignorance that he had, you know, when doing this, you know, monstrosity, is that, you know, he didn't count on the fact that there was going to be as much surveillance, because from where he was from, it's a very small town. You know, the university, I believe he went to DeSales University in Pennsylvania, which is a very small university in comparison to the University of Idaho. So whenever we have big universities, one of the, I mean, you know, whenever you're living by a university near a big university, everybody has a lot of surveillance cameras around to protect their homes and things like that. I don't think he counted on that fact. You know, that's how we know he did do some stalking. He did go, you know, because we see him on different surveillance cameras. So it wouldn't surprise me any that at the time of the trial, we even learn more about that. Now, and then also, you know, the data phone. You know, I mean, he turned on his phone when he probably shouldn't have, you know, and they got him, you know, in the area. So I mean, so I just think, you know, there's just going to be, you know, at this point, you know, where everybody's speculating, we're a part of that. But you know, I just think there's going to be even more surveillance that's going to tie him to it, and of course, you know, the cell phone data that's going to particularly, you know, tie him to it. And I think, you know, as humans, right, we always do want to know why, because we're humans. We want to know, why did these things happen, in order for us to try to, you know, prevent them in the future, or try to see how could we have, you know, steered the course. Like, where did this particular human, where in the development did this human go wrong? What happened that could have potentially have given a positive outcome, you know, versus the outcome that we have and the losses that we have, you know. So I think it's always important that even after the fact, right, everybody's going to write books and movies and all that, you know, once the trial is done, because that's when we're going to know we're going to know a lot of our questions will be answered. And, you know, everybody's going to be writing books and movies and all of that, because as humans, we want to try to understand this, to hopefully try, you know, to prevent it from, you know, from happening, you know, because it does take a special kind of someone to do this kind of monstrosity. You know, I mean, he didn't have any connections to the people that we know of. You know, he didn't know them. The stalking had to have happened somewhere at some time, you know, and you know, and that's just kind of, you know, my give and take on it. I think it's good for us to talk about and try to see, like, you know, what happened. I think for me and my background and my educational background, I want to know more about his development, you know, because I think there's a lot of clues and a lot of things that are going to be telltale coming out of, you know, the development. But you know, we won't know that until he himself starts talking, or until the trial, and we get a sense of, you know, as people start coming up, knowing him and his past.
Exactly. I appreciate all y'all's thoughts and insights, and I do want to say this to my channel defense. Not that y'all are attacking me or anything like that. I didn't take it at that at all. And in the chat, I've also stated that, you know, sometimes whenever you type some stuff out, it could look very rude, and sometimes it's misinterpreted. So if things happen, you know, people are human, things of that nature. So please don't take it personal if you're timed out or something of that nature. I don't like that to happen, but we have a very calm chat in here, and we try to just all, we don't need to agree, but we disagree to agree. You know what I mean? And everybody's opinions are valid. So that's all I want to say about that. But as far as my channel is concerned, I try to dig deeper than the surface, and I don't like to. I'm getting to the point, honestly, where I'm tired of talking about this case, because I'm just kind of just emptying out my emails with the shows that I've held on to for a long time, and that's why it kind of seems like they're older and the footage is older and things of that nature because I've held on to them for so long. I'm just trying to empty out my emails so that I can move on with different directions, as you've seen in my channel. If you've ever gone there and looked at the library, I talk about a lot of different cases, both I talk about addictions, I talk about homelessness. I'm going to talk about homeless vets just to bring awareness to these situations that are going on in our daily lives that people don't talk about. Am I an expert on everything? No. Am I but I try to do research before I present something, so it's never just speculatory. It's based on, life experiences and obviously education and input from other people. So I just wanted to give you guys a little understanding about the channel. I don't want the channel or the chat to come across as being one dimensional, because we do try to incorporate different variations on different things. And I don't know about you guys, but I am getting kind of tired of this case. What do y'all think? I mean, I'm ready for the trial. Are y'all ready for the trial?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
If there is a trial.
If there is a trial, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, and that's not scheduled. It's potentially not scheduled, from what I've heard the other day, till June of 2025. And the reason why they're waiting till about June is because that's when all of the schools will be let out, and because we don't know how this is going to affect, you know, university students and things of that nature. So, I mean, waiting another year for this trial is going to be, I mean, yeah, it's going to be crazy. I know I can't talk about this trial for another year.
right.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna,
Absolutely.
I'm not
I
gonna talk
agree.
I'm not gonna talk about this for another year. I promise you. I'm getting to the end of my life with it, and you're probably not gonna hear my input on IDAHO4 for a long time, because there's a lot of new creators that are starting from the beginning, and when you go back and you listen to them, you're like, okay, it's a fresh approach, but yet you know what you know as far as your own research that you've been doing, and it kind of intertwined
Mhm.
with everything, and it makes you feel crazy after a while.
Mhm. It's very time consuming and energy consuming. And it can,
Yeah.
and like bring you down too, like in my, you know what I mean? Like it's just too much. Like we're just going around in circles, I feel sometimes too. We're not
Mm-hmm.
really, we have to see some kind of light in this. There has to be joy that comes out of this case.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I look at it. I mean, I try to be, I'm a really positive person, so I totally understand what you're saying completely, because it's like it gets sickening after a while. Not that we want justice, of course, true justice for we want the right person to, you know, to be sitting in a jail cell, and we want to know what happened, and we just what is it all for? We just, there has, like I said, there has to be some kind of joy that comes out of this.
Right.
There's a lot of negativity and a lot of, you know, just,
Amicus, I meant to ask you earlier, can you give us a little bit more insight on your channel? Like, what do you cover? And I know you said you were viewed as a pro burger. Well, many people came in here and they've labeled me as well. They used to call me a guilter, so I don't even know what either one of those really means, and I don't care to know, because I don't really answer the labels. But can you give us an insight a little bit more on your channel? Because I offered that opportunity to Ginger, and then you came up on panel. We were mid discussion, so I didn't give you the opportunity to do that.
So I am very unbiased. I'm very unbiased. If anyone watches my channel, I say that I can go either way, and the thoughts that I give, I mean, there's even some theories that I give where I say, you know, Brian Koberger could have done this with someone else. I just don't believe that he did this by himself. Like, but that doesn't mean that I'm negating the fact that it could be him with someone else. But the thing is that a lot of my opinions kind of bring into question the accusations that are against him. And that doesn't mean that I am a pro-burger. It means that I am pro-justice. I mean, look at my name, for example. My name is Amicus Curiae. Like, I am literally, like, I'm trying to say that I support the justice system. But in questioning the justice system, yeah, people have become very, very harsh towards me and have said that I am a pro-burger. And on top of that, I've been doxxed. I've actually had a couple people who have emailed me with my personal information and have tried to say that they're going to out me, which is really kind of funny because I'm like, I'm military, so go ahead and try that. I dare you. But yeah, people have like become very, very aggressive towards me. It's been kind of crazy. And so yeah, so that's kind of the consensus around my channel is I'm a pro-worker, but I don't really see how I've had that viewpoint on people. I really don't.
Okay. Yeah, people have their strong opinions and their strong beliefs, you know, and sometimes they get triggered without even realizing they're being triggered. You know, we've talked about the psychological effect, and I know that you understand it, Kay understands it, and Ginger understands it. You know, when somebody feels strongly about something, it doesn't mean that they're wrong. It's just the approach that they might take with their belief system and the aggressiveness that comes with it. Like if you can get your point across without being aggressive or calling names or any of that, you know, there's nothing wrong with your opinion. You are you, and you know, we're all raised differently. We all have our own traumas. We all have our own setbacks. We all have our own strengths. It doesn't make us any less valid than the next person, you know. So I always like to push that belief system, you know, because I believe that I'm no better than anybody else and they're no better than me. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
so let me ask you guys one more question and then I'm probably gonna call it for the night because I'm still kind of ill. Not as bad as last night, but I'm still kind of ill. Do you believe that this could have been a female? And I actually got two questions, so I'll go around and y'all can answer. If it could have been a female, and if there could have been more than one person, whether it be a two-party team or more. So we'll start with Ginger because she's about to get out of here. She said so. We'll start with you, Ginger, and then we'll go to Amicus and then Kay.
Okay. Do I believe that it could have been a woman?
Yes.
Yes, I believe that it's possible. I'm not sure if I necessarily believe, you know, myself that, you know, there was a female involved, but I definitely do believe that there were multiple people. Because I'm going more on the idea that this is more, you know, like a cartel you know, maybe even a satanic or Aryan Brotherhood. I'm, you know, something along those lines. That's kind of like how I feel about it. And that Koberger is just, you know, sitting in a jail. I don't believe that he's actually sitting in a jail cell. I just believe that he's actually in witness protection. But that's
Okay.
just my personal opinion.
Okay. Amicus.
I apologize. Can I hit on something that was said just a little bit ago? If that's
Sure.
okay.
Sure.
So something that was said, and I just want to point it out because I feel very strongly about this, is that, you know, something that was brought up was that the case has been too long. It's been like we've been pushing it back a lot, and I don't really feel that way. I feel like if you look at, for example, the Karen Reed trial and stuff like that. I mean, this woman was literally at the scene. She was the last person to see this person being killed, or not person being killed. I'm sorry, this person that was killed. And so something I really wanted to hit on, because I think it's very pertinent, is that this case is not short by any means, like at all.
Right.
This case has been going on for as long as it's needed to go on. And sorry, I'm kind of going through my notes here, but that was just something I wanted to hit on.
You're fine. You're fine. Yeah, so let me get back off camera. Good God. Okay, Kay.
You look low, Gage. I just feel bad that you feel sick. I'm sorry that you're feeling ill.
Yeah, I'll get better. Kay?
I think, well, to answer your questions, you know, historically, what we know of how women kill versus how men kill, you know, I feel like, you know, there couldn't have been a woman, just because of the knife, you know, that was used. If a woman's gonna do, you know, like you take some of the serial killers, you know, that were women, like Arlene Warno's, the Miss Warno's case. I mean, she used guns, you know, so something quick, something fast, you know. So that's that. You know, I feel like this is definitely, if looking at it, it would have been, in my mind, you know, a male. It would surprise me if the evidence led to a female. And then the other thing that you asked about, you know, could there have been, you know, more than one killer, you know, more than one person that did this, you know? No, I don't think so, because if there would have been more, it would have been more sloppy. I mean, one person can clean up after themselves fairly well. You know, you add two people into the mix, that's going to be more things would have been left behind. It would have been even more sloppier in that sense, you know. So I mean, because in my mind, that's just how I think. You know, if there would have been, you know, more than that, you know, and then plus, you know, for me in my rationale, you know, I don't feel, you know, that the cartel had anything to do with it, or all that other stuff. I don't. For me, and no, in my logical mind, no. I mean, I think that the reason why he was zoned in, why they were able to catch him, and thank God that they did, was because of all of the surveillances, of all of the cameras. You know, this was, I go back to that because that's, we know that they have a lot of surveillance cameras, you know, from neighbors, from people down the street. I mean, you know, everybody, and as it grows, as our country continues to grow, everybody's putting cameras up on to protect their homes, and those cameras are catching things that normally no one would be catching because there's a camera there. So I mean, we're getting to the point to where it's going to be kind of impossible for you to even take out your trash without 4 or 5 neighbors knowing at what time you took out your trash. I mean, they're going to be able to pinpoint it down to the second, you know. So I, you know, for me, I just think, you know, there's going to be a lot of evidence coming out of those surveillance cameras that and they probably have a lot of that footage, you know. And then also, you know, the phone, you know, I mean, so you mean to tell me that you know, with the phone surveillance that we have, I mean, even in the Alec Murdoch case, we learned that they can now, with our cell phones and the things that we do with our cell phones and where we ping our cell phones, that's getting extremely accurate as to where, you know, very close to where you know, where all of that can be. So I just think, you know, there's just a lot of evidence, digital evidence that is gonna come up out of this. So I don't feel that, you know, we have the wrong person in jail. I don't feel that the United States is going to be putting somebody in the Secret Service or anything like that. I mean, I doubt it. You know, I don't. Maybe I'm too close-minded, but I just don't feel any of those theories are relevant.
Could I add something to that?
Sure.
I mean, yeah.
I'll be quick.
Okay.
But so for being a female part, I do agree with you. I don't think that it was a female, and that's because the PC or like the law enforcement, they have come out and they've said that there were 3 other male DNAs that they were looking into. So I don't think that it was a female if they were to mention that part, right? And then you had mentioned at one point, like, people being sloppy within this 8 minutes, right? They never mentioned, and this is basic DNA science, right? This is basic forensic science, is that if someone was to act on this alone, then there should be clear DNA that shows pieces of evidence, like DNA evidence, that transfers from one body to another one. So if it was clear that one person had done this, there would be some trace of DNA, considering that this DNA was so sloppy and potentially sloppy, as you put it, that there would be at least a minuscule amount of blood that would go from one person to the next person if one person had done it, especially when law enforcement says this was done by one weapon and they're looking for this knife sheath. Go ahead, Cash. What do you mean, nope? But do you get what I'm saying?
I think no, I don't. No, I really don't get what you're saying. I mean, I have no idea what you just said. So what was your point?
Well, because you said this murder was sloppy, and it was done in 8 minutes. It was sloppy. Then there would be DNA that would transfer from one body to another one if it was done by one person.
Okay, no, I think you misunderstood what I said. I used the word sloppy. I never even said anything about 8 minutes. But what I meant to say was, if there was multiple people, right? Whenever there's a couple of people in doing a crime, right? If this is your first crime, you know, that you're going to go and you're going to, you know, kill someone, sometimes you yourself are going to go into some bit of a shock because maybe you didn't, you know, whenever. It's one thing to see, you know, killing done on TV, and it's a whole other thing to experience it in person. So that's what I meant by, like, if there would have been more than one person in the home doing this, it would have gotten sloppy, meaning, you know, there would have been there would have been more left behind at the scene, you know, whether it's
Like
DNA,
blood's
whether
blood,
it's
victim for victim. That's what I'm trying to get at.
you're
Yeah.
trying to get at what?
That's what I'm trying to get at, is that there would, if it was sloppy in any sense, whether it was a fingerprint, whether it was a piece of DNA or something like that, don't you think that there would be some sloppiness in someone going from victim to victim and killing them?
I don't know, because I mean, you know, this happened. He did this fast.
Absolutely.
You know, he did it fast. I don't know.
Like there would
I don't
have to
know.
be blood from the first victim on the second, and then second to the third, and then third to the
Right.
fourth. You know?
Yeah, but okay, yeah, but that the thing about it is that we don't have the knife, dude. We don't have
We
the
also
knife.
don't have how many people did it except for one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you know, you're right about that. But I mean, unless we get a hold of the knife, are we gonna be able to see how much DNA is gonna be, you know, on that knife? You know, I mean, and at the same time, like, you know, for multiple people to have come in and to do this, I'm saying what I'm saying, where I'm in confidence that it was only one person, is because of all of the surveillance cameras that they have
Yeah,
of
but
this
I'm
of
talking about
the
things that happen within the scene. I don't really, respectfully,
yeah.
I
But I
don't
mean,
care
but,
about what happened with the cameras.
right. But the thing about it is that if there was only one person going by this house multiple times and was seen multiple times coming to that home,
Yeah, but
and
they
out
never
of
talked about the people that could have walked there.
so now all of the sudden from out of the blue, we're gonna get people that are walking there. We're gonna get
That's
if
not
you
out
were
of the
walking
blue. That
there.
happened within the first 2 weeks. There was conversations about people walking there. That happened within the first 2 weeks
Yeah.
of this happening.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
ask you guys a question. Okay, you're great at this. You are great at this. I love it. You know, you're talking about DNA transfer. So the very first person, when they're stabbed, their DNA supposedly transfers to the second person, to the third person, to the fourth person. So whoever was stabbed last would have had three other person DNA in their body, even if the blood was not on them, even if they were wiped clean. If that knife went into their body, in theory, wouldn't you say that they would have had DNA from the other three people?
Yeah, and I mean, and that goes to say that we don't know because we haven't gotten to the trial. We don't know that
But
there wasn't
based
DNA.
on science, though, based on what you
Yeah,
know about science,
yeah. I mean, I think
But
absolutely.
they've
I just
released
don't
much
think that
less.
but I
do
don't think that
what?
they're releasing everything. I don't
They
think
What'd you
have
that they
say?
have
released much
released.
less. I mean, they have released these statements saying that, you know, go read the PCA. This will incriminate whoever you think it's about. I mean, Twizzlestick, let's look at him. He had one little comment made about him and it got brought up in court. I mean, if there was even a second, even if there was a chance of a doubt that these people had blood from, and this is not to mention everything else, but you know, if there was even a chance that this blood did pass from victim to victim to victim, they would mention that. There would be 100% chance that they would mention that, just to
Not
make you
necessarily though. Not necessarily. Not right now. I think your question is gonna get answered when we go into the trial. But there is nothing to say that they have to answer those things right now. I think DNA is gonna play a big part of that. And I think that that is coming, you know, but we can't sit here because we really don't know because they haven't said in you know they've said some things but they haven't said everything and they're not going to because then what's the point of having a trial if they're
what was the
if
most
everything
incriminating things that they put out
if
though.
if everything that they if everything that they have if they put it all out right now for us to read and in the PSA and blah 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 and da 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 then what's the point of having a trial
No,
this
that
then this
doesn't. That
person's
doesn't
not
make.
going to ever
Okay,
get. Then this person's
respectfully,
never going to get a fair trial. I mean, I'm just saying we have to like chill. Like I think more things are
that
coming.
doesn't make sense
know.
though, because the PCA is specifically targeted to Brian Koberger. The PCA, like, and I've said this in my videos too, is that the PCA doesn't outline all the other things that they found in the case because it is specifically geared towards Brian Koberger. And so for them to not mention something that says that there was blood found on the first victim that afterwards follows in lines with the rest of the victims, that would be so irresponsible, because that would lead people to believe that there was more than one killer. Like, they would have to mention that. And considering they've already done all this forensic information, all this analysis to show that there was blood on the knife sheath, or not blood, I'm sorry, DNA on the knife sheath, and to show that there was a damn footprint in front of Dill Morrison's door, that would be so irresponsible of them to not mention that there was blood that was on the first victim that ended up on the last victim, to show that it was one person.
I understand. I
I
understand
just
what
don't
you're
think that.
saying. I understand what you're saying, Amicus, and you're right. But at the same time, during some of the hearings, they discussed exculpatory evidence, and if any of the stuff is found out that the prosecution withheld evidence, such as that, I'm not saying I understand the concept. I understand the concept of the PCA all the way past the trial. I get it because I'm studying it right now, but I understand it, and that doesn't make me an expert. But I understand the process. And anyways, they wouldn't discuss that in the PCA. It would just that would be evidence that would be gagged. That would be evident that
Why would that be gagged?
because that would be evident that they're wanting to disclose later on in the trial, not necessarily used to have probable cause to arrest them. The PCA is just a probable cause affidavit, meaning that they apply that to the least amount of evidence needed to show that this individual could have possibly committed this crime. The judge goes over the PCA, he signs off, and then there's a preliminary hearing, which we didn't have at this point, and it goes into the grand jury where they do more investigation to make sure that the probable cause matches the accusations of the crime. So they wouldn't be putting all their big cards out there like that because it's not necessary.
But they didn't know that the gag order was going to be a thing until months after. So why would they?
But what we're trying to tell you, is that at the time when this starts to happen, all that they have to do is show the minimum. They don't have to show everything that they've got, regardless of what's going to happen in the gag order, this and that, and the third following. In order to get him in there, it's the minimum. That's what we're trying to say, is that they're not going to show everything on that PCA because they don't have to. Right now, they don't. That is going to be something for the trial.
Because anytime a crime is committed, okay. See, I work with juveniles. So a juvenile commits a crime tonight. We have an affidavit that is given to us by the police to put them. We don't arrest them. We don't put them in custody. We put them in custody. We have to have probable cause to put somebody in custody. It does not mean they have to put everything that the juvenile did to be detained. I don't know if that makes sense. My head's swimming right now, so I'm trying to make as much sense as possible.
No, it does. It does. I'm just saying that, like, with the fact that there was so much misinformation, including in the PCA, considering that initially they didn't even know what vehicle they were looking for. And I'm not making that shit up. That shit happened. It said that we initially thought it was this car, and then it was wrong. You would just think that they would put so much more information into this PCA to make it stick more. And that's why people thought that, when they went to Pennsylvania, you have to have more of a reason in order to extradite someone than you would just have to arrest them in the state that they were in. So you would have to find more evidence. So they found the DNA. Why wouldn't they initially come out and say, hey, by the way, all this blood was on these other people? It seems
Right. I get your point. But to be fair as well, when it came to Ethan, they redacted a lot of that information. So that would, if he was the last victim, that would have been the place where all this stuff that we're talking about would have been placed, right?
potentially if he was the last victim.
Yes, if he was the last victim, or Xana, or whoever, there was a large portion redacted. So we don't know what went in that part. They could have, I mean, not law enforcement, but the court could have seen that portion that was redacted to the public. Maybe it was so gruesome that they didn't want to put that out into the public.
You're
They
right.
didn't want the
I
family-
honestly, I'm going to be honest here. I completely forgot about the fact that there was a lot of redacted statements for that. That's my bad.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's that responsibility to the families because they're already going to have to hear about it. They're going to have to see it in a trial. You wouldn't want the families to have to read all that at the very beginning. They are already having to go with the death of their loved ones and all that. I mean, I would believe that it's out of courtesy for the families and the public because not everybody can handle that.
Yeah,
So
but
there was
also their autopsies were released. So I don't really know what benefit to them it would have given them to redact the fact that it said blood was on each part of them.
right.
I'm not saying that it wasn't. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that because I have, like I just said, I owned up to forgetting about the redacted parts, but I don't really understand why they would need to redact those parts.
They're going to have to redact those things. I mean, it is that way, and it has been that way because at the same time, all of those details can't come out because then the defendant wouldn't be able to have a fair trial. I mean, everybody knows a lot about this case. I mean, this person has to have a fair trial. They've got to find somewhere to have a fair trial, and if they gave everything up and everybody knew everything, then what is the point of being innocent until proven guilty? They're going to have to hold some of it. They're going to have to hold some of it back. I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to.
She had a question for you. What did you say, Amicus?
I said, in what other situation has any other case done that though? Like genuinely, like when they truly believe that someone is guilty, when have they ever said, we're not going to say that, this person didn't do this, this, and this because of a potential gag order or a potential mistrial or something like that?
Okay, well, let me explain the PCA to you, okay? The PCA is written by the arresting officer. So whatever the arresting officer gets out of the evidence that they collect, whether it be their own personal interpretation of the evidence that they gather, or whether it be other forms of forensics, labs, all of this stuff, okay? When you look at other PCAs that are public, that are being publicized with high profile cases, you don't hear about the lab results. You don't hear about any of that. You hear about the most basic because you're just trying to get an arrest warrant. That's all you're trying to do with the PCA. That's it. It has nothing to do with the trial at that point, okay? You're just getting an arrest warrant. You're just wanting the judge to say, okay, I've read your evidence that you have against this person. In my belief, by what I've experienced by law and everything that I've been exposed to in training and everything else, I believe that there's enough to arrest them. So that's when the search warrants
Yeah.
start being filed. That's when they start being applicated. So there's a process in all this. It's not all thrown together. And I don't know if that makes sense to you or not. Amicus, are you there?
Yes, sorry.
You're fine.
No, I mean I get it. Like I understand that there's like pertinent cases or pertinent facts to the case. Like I've pointed that out in my videos that like the PCA in general is specifically tailored to his case. But
Yeah.
when you get to this point in this case where you have so many questions, you just have to wonder, like everyone is wondering. I mean, all of YouTube, all of people around this case are wondering how did people get to this point? How did people even, ascertain like this whole thing, right? But
Right.
and that's my whole point with it, is that if you did, and I'm not saying that it's not possible that people withheld these facts because it didn't matter to them at the time, but when you look at it from hindsight, you just have to wonder, why weren't things that seem to have built the case up even more to reject this opinion of a potential mistrial, why weren't they put in there? That's my point. Is like, we see how much question has been brought about this case, so the basis of it is where are these like misinformation, like where's this misinformation coming from, or this lack of facts coming from? And so when you hear this other stuff of, oh well, maybe it was redacted, or maybe they just didn't put it in there, in my opinion, I look at it as, why? Like
Okay.
it would help all of
Well,
these questions, right?
Of course. You're right on point there. Well, the unfortunate is we're getting to the next portion of the case, which is the suppression hearings. And this is where all that information that you're asking about, all that evidence, I don't like calling it information because it's evidence. It's evidence, okay? So the suppression hearings are going to be done by the prosecution and the defense on both sides to suppress the evidence that they do have. And at this point, you're going to hear all the stuff that hasn't been. I don't know if they're going to let us hear it or not. I mean, I'm just speculating, but in a normal trial, you would hear what's being suppressed, meaning that that's not going to be used in the trial. So whatever they argue about is not evidentiary. They're going to argue about it, and they're going to file a motion to suppress this evidence that was discovered in the discovery phase. So at this point, stuff's going to get thrown out. You're going to hear what got thrown out somehow, I'm sure. So it's going to answer those questions that you're asking as to why now. It's going to answer some of those questions, but we're all going to have questions until the final verdict is read, whether it be guilty or whether it be innocent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I think that that's going to be kind of where the line gets drawn, right? Whether this was a case that was fraudulent or this was a case that was truthful. Because if this case was truthful and this was a case that like was done based on the facts, then that stuff probably won't be thrown out. But if it is thrown out, it's going to be because things that like were withheld. And I'm not talking about anything specific necessarily, but I feel like that's where the line is going to be drawn, is when we start to see things that are being thrown out. We're going to see like, where did the truth lie in a lot of these, not necessarily facts, but a lot of these things that they find in evidence or lack thereof.
Yeah. So what's going to happen through this process is going to clear up the muddied waters for a lot of people. And people are still, based on their beliefs, based on what their perception is of law enforcement or the courts or the government or whatever it might be, they're still going to align their thoughts based on those belief systems. So even if things are thrown out that show that this individual is the one, if they're kept in there and they're not, and the other things are thrown out, the other evidence is thrown out, you're still gonna, it's gonna start to paint that picture of guilt or innocence, not to the public, but to the court. So after this phase, they're gonna pick the jurors. The jurors are gonna be asked all these questions, based on their understanding of the law and their own personal preferences and stuff like that, based by the prosecution and the defense. So, like I've stated to people, at this point, all the thought that we believe in our feelings and emotions, it's out of our hands. It's the only person that could set this man free at this point would be the prosecution or the jury. And at the same token, the only person that could convict at this point would be the prosecution or the jury. So it's getting down to crunch time. It's getting down. I know June 2025 sounds like a long time away, but it's going to happen quickly. September or August is the last date for all the discovery, I think, to be handed over. So by August, anything after whatever the August date is, they can't use that in the trial. No matter the public opinion, they can't use that evidence in the trial if it's not handed over by the August date.
Right.
So I hope that this is kind of cleared up a little bit to the chat, because I'm not saying common people as an insult, okay? I don't want y'all to start attacking me, because I'm saying individuals that have not been exposed to court processes, whether being involved in the court system, whether being involved in the criminal justice system themselves. Normal people don't have the concept of the process that goes from start to finish. How I didn't until I started studying it. And I've been, a therapist for 20 years, working with criminals and drug addicts and all this and that and the other. I had no real basis upon it until I started learning the deep process of it. So, to be fair, most people in society do not have a generalized concept of the process. That makes sense to you, both of you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree with you. And I also want to say, um, but also people have to be open-minded to receiving information as well, whenever we're trying to explain it, and because that's, I think sometimes it gets difficult for some, because they have such strong beliefs, and sometimes, we have to set those strong beliefs aside and hear the people, listen to the people as we're trying to explain it to you, so then you could understand where it is that we're coming from. Because if in your mind you're already thinking about a comeback, you're already thinking about what you're going to say next, then you didn't hear what was being said. So I think sometimes we have to, with these specific topics and how heated everything can get from one point to another, it's frustrating when we're trying to educate and we're not being heard, and it goes round and round, because what ends up happening is no one's listening to anyone and everyone is talking. Those are debates and conversations and chats that I do not like to participate in. Because if I feel like I'm not being heard, like if you're not giving me the courtesy to hear me, to hear where I'm coming from, or for me to try to explain it, and you're very quick to already have a comeback, then that already tells me I just wasted my time and my energy talking, because you didn't hear anything that I said, and so I think sometimes it's our duty, right, whenever we get up on these panels and whenever we're talking, because we don't know who is going to be listening to this. We know that we have people in the chat that are present now listening to everything, but once we go off, 12 gauge has a library and anybody can access this, so other people can access this. And for me, I come more from the educational background, more from trying to help educate and kind of decipher what some of these things may mean. I'm not here to argue with one way or another, because at the end of the day, and 12 gauge has said it himself, is I don't have a dog in the fight. I really don't. I really don't. So, I just think that people also have to have open-mindedness, and we have to be responsible when we are up here on panel talking to people, because there are a lot of people that are vulnerable, that don't quite understand, and could be very vulnerable to our opinions and think of them as factual, and they're not, and a lot of it's not factual. So I mean, that's just my take on it. I think you did a beautiful job, 12 gauge, on explaining it, probably better than I could than I could have, because I think I got very frustrated there. But I appreciate being on the panel tonight.
Thank you.
For me, I'm not going to be on the panel if we're not going to hear each other with an open mindedness. I'm not going to do that.
Well, I believe everybody up on these panels tonight was open minded. We're all able to have our opinions and our thoughts, because that's what makes a great conversation. We can learn from each other regardless of our experiences in specific areas. One thing that I'm going to present in later lives is I don't know if either one of y'all have heard of the beehive effect, and that's kind of like what's going on in the world today. And also in that live, I'm also going to present the process of people being being programmed to a totalitarian type government or process that encompasses people to be dumbed down in order to control them. So, if either one of y'all would like to join me on that panel, that'd be great. You're more than welcome to come up anytime. And I really appreciate your time and your input and your energy because it's needed. Sometimes we don't need to just skirt around the issue and just try to please people with what they want to hear. I want to hear people's true perspective. We don't need to get angry or aggressive in order to say what we need to say based on our own thoughts. And I think it's beautiful that we were able to do this tonight, whether you agree with me or not. There was 4 people up on this panel that didn't start yelling at each other or calling each other names or anything like that. And I think that's a great example for the rest of the community. Amicus, I will check out a lot more of your videos so I can get more versed with what your direction is on your channel. And if any time, I don't know if you would invite me up on your panel, but if any time that you wanted me on your panel, I'm more than able to do that.
Oh no, I appreciate it. I actually I really enjoyed your live tonight, and I felt like you were very open-minded and very fair with everything that you were saying. I was actually very pleasantly surprised listening to your channel. I just I like I said before, I'm a very open-minded person. I try to really put that on my channel, although some people just really see it as me being closed-minded or me being like oppositional, and that's really not the case. I try to remain as open as possible. I'm not trying to argue with anyone.
Right.
And so I think that's why I really like your channel. And if people see that as differently, then that sucks for them.
Right, right. I mean, it's hard to gauge people's thoughts and emotions when you're reading it in a chat. You know, it's kind of like a text. You know, somebody could be very friendly, but their text language is terrible. You know what I mean? Have you ever
Yeah.
gotten a text and you're like, "What the hell? What is wrong with you?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Or their voice language, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and the same thing in our communications. I believe that we all can, you know, brush up on our communication skills, you know, but our backgrounds and everything else determines that as well. Some people don't have a lot of time or energy for bullshit, and they're gonna, you know, they're gonna speak their mind, and there's nothing wrong with that. Both of you come from the military, so I'm sure you are a little stronger minded than the average person, you know.
Very strong-minded coming in from
Or
2
you
years.
know,
Yeah.
so I could tell, you know. I know
So,
Kate
I mean,
personally.
I know that. I mean, I'm not a YouTuber, right? I don't have a channel. I don't do these things. I know 12 Gauge from a long time, and he knows my background and knows all, and that's how I get invited up until his up on the panel. But if even if I were to even think about starting my own channel, which I'm not, it's the furthest thing from my mind. One of the reasons why it's always been furthest thing from my mind was because of what um Alchemist said, what she said earlier, which that she's received threats and she's received all this stuff, and it can get, I don't know, it can get kind of pretty scary. Marty, let me ask you, have you also received threats? And I mean, do we? I mean, because in your channel, we talk about pretty heavy stuff. Um, uh, and this is
Well,
just coming from just being concerned. Like, do you also get threats?
well, I don't. I reserve the right to not really talk about that in on the live, but I can say that I've been exposed to other people close to me that have, you know, had situations where they have been tried to be persuaded to think one way or the other for
Oh,
whatever
wow.
reason. We do have to understand that we deal with a lot of individuals that are on this internet that they have their own thoughts and beliefs, and that's why, you know, it's very mindful to anybody who is thinking about being a creator or is a current creator that you not divulge a lot of personal information, or I mean, even put your real name out there. I mean, you know, that's why a lot of times um it's very important that you don't trust everybody like you would trust them in real life. I mean, because we don't really know who is on the other end of that screen or what their intent of getting close to you is, you know. So I would suggest that anybody that is thinking about having a channel or is a creator, that you protect your stuff really closely and that you don't trust just anybody. So
Hmm.
I know that kind of went off what you asked me. Um, I have people in high ranking places that if any of that was to ever happen, um, I would make sure that I notified those people to handle it. And it is a criminal offense to be doing this type of stuff just because you feel that you're anonymous or you can create different screen names or whatever. Your intent goes through the chat. You can see who, you know, trained professionals are taught to view patterns. So if you come into a chat and your pattern is the same, which it will always be, or an email or something, do understand it's a criminal offense to be almost stalking somebody by or wanting to dox them or anything of that nature. And you will be found out. It's not an anonymous world like you would think.
Yeah, that gives me
Sorry.
a lot of concern. That just gives me a lot of concern. Even just coming, up on the panel. It just gives me a lot. I'm gonna have to think about things, because I don't, because the last thing that I want, is for something like that, to happen,
Right.
because I have, and I think that's why I always try to, when I come up on your panel, I try to always be more of the educator, more of, this is what I know to be a fact, or if I am stating my opinion, for me to state my opinion, I try not to, push my agenda and be so, assertive with, with things, because I don't, because that can come across, very in a very different light, but
You don't have to
I did
worry
not know
about it.
that.
I call out people that I probably shouldn't be calling out. That's my issue.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to do. Like I said, people have strong personalities. I've worked with criminal offenders for 20 years. I'm not used to going as delicate as I am on this channel. I'm a lot more assertive in my real life. I mean, people think
That's my
that
whole stance.
they don't understand that I have that side of me. Just because I don't bring it out on the panel does not mean that it doesn't exist. Sometimes people take your kindness for weakness, and that's not always true. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys being up here. And Amicus, don't change for anybody, but just kind of, do understand that there are a lot of unstable individuals that don't understand that they're unstable. Their thoughts are valid, but their intent and motive may not be. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no,
I'm
and
sure.
I appreciate you saying that. Like I really, really do. But at the same time, I still posted and I said I'm current military, so I encourage them to
Yeah.
try
Well,
best.
here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. I will say, I will say this. Um, I'm gonna caution you. Being military, you represent who the Air Force is who you represent.
Oh no, I
Whenever you
don't.
put yourself, when you start to say that you're military, and there's some people that will see you as a representative of the Air Force. And so even though you're thinking on the lines of, this is my YouTube channel, this is where I can come, it's mine and I own this, and that's rightfully so, you do. But at the same time, I would caution you to maybe not be so vocal about your military background, because if you have such strong feelings, one way or another about whatever situations it is, it's going to take a couple of phone calls to your chain of command, and then you're standing in front of your chain of command trying to defend some of the things that you have said. And
Can I
that's the
interrupt
last
you real quick?
thing. Hang on
That's
one second.
Yeah.
Hang
no,
on one
that's not
second.
how it works though. It's not how it works. I'm telling you it's not how it works. I'm just
Okay.
trying I'm not trying to interrupt you to be rude. I'm trying to interrupt to say that when you publicly declare something as saying that you're a part of the military, I'm not saying that I'm a part of the military that's representing Brian Koberger. That's not the case. And even if you look at
Right.
my bio on my YouTube, I say that I do not represent the United States Air Force. That is something that's in our AFI or the UCMJ, as you probably know that. So no, I do not represent the Air Force. The thing that I only say when I say that I represent the Air Force is that you cannot blackmail me. You cannot do things that fall under trying to undermine or use the military in any other way. So when people say they're going to show up to my house or they say they're going to show up to my work, that's when I say I'm a part of the Air Force, because no, you cannot show up to United States Air Force Base. I never ever say that because I support Brian Koberger that it's because the United States Air Force backs that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I get that. And
we
I mean,
get your point.
I
We
get
get
that. And I get that. And I get that. I'm just saying, sometimes you don't want to be put yourself in that predicament, is all I'm
people are
saying.
just really messy out here on these YouTube streets.
Yeah,
They
some people
really
can be
are.
messy. Yeah.
They
Yeah,
are
no,
messy on these YouTube streets. I mean, Your
Yeah. And I mean,
wording,
and I'm just
your
coming to you
wording.
like just as a cautionary, as just being a cautionary because you are very strong-minded. And once, I have felt that, just being on the panel with you one time, that it is, I mean, you believe what you believe and that is it, or that is how you
That's
came across to
awesome.
me,
That's
and
awesome.
but at the same time, I just wouldn't want you to ever be in harm's way
No, I appreciate
because of it. I mean, that's all I'm trying to say. I mean, and I would definitely never want you because somebody is taking things that you say out of context. I would never want you to ever be standing in front of your chain of command trying to explain why this incident happened to begin with.
Yeah.
That can put you, at jeopardy, as being a female, as being in the military, I just, from one female to another, because first of all, whatever branch that we serve, we are soldiers, so this is from one soldier, to another, I want you just to stay safe. And and sometimes it's sometimes you have to ask yourself, is it worth the fight? Because sometimes you can fight and be right, or sometimes you can just say, hey, I know I'm right, and just let people talk.
Well,
But I want you to
yeah.
stay safe. I really want you to stay safe.
Has nothing to do
And
with the Air Force, though, like I've already said. So,
good.
yeah.
Good.
But I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate it. That's why I say in my bio that I do not represent the United States Air Force. The only time that I would ever get in trouble for being a United States Airman is if I was in uniform in that video, and I've made that objective very clear with my leadership, and they were like, it does not violate any type of law. But I do appreciate you saying that. I really do.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys being up here with a different perspective, because very seldom do you get either past military or current military that have, their opinions and beliefs, that are as clear and concise as
Right.
y'all been able to present it tonight, because a lot of times it's very one dimensional. Y'all have an open perspective, to your thought process, and that's deeply appreciated.
But the last thing I did want to hit on there too is that I'm not going to get in trouble for speaking these things, because just because I'm a United States Airman does not mean that I'm not allowed to partake in activities that normal folk or citizens, take part in.
Right.
Like, I can
Right.
have a YouTube channel as long as I don't get up here and say, this U.S. Air Force citizen says that Brian Koberger is innocent, and that's how we feel as the United States. As long as I don't say that shit, it's fine,
Well, I didn't even know you were in the military. I didn't know you were in the military until you said it tonight. So
Yeah.
it's like I said, thank you for all your concerns and your thoughts and your beliefs. I mean, I've enjoyed it tonight with everybody that was on panel. I welcome you all back because I do have to finish up that video at some point. I think it was pretty much done though. I think they did talk about other I think they talk about Dr. Drew's experience. I have to go and watch it to make sure that that's all that is. I've always liked Dr. Drew. Y'all have any kind of insight on that before we cut it off? I mean, Dr. Drew is pretty fair.
Yeah, no, I think we've hit on all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know who he is. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know who he is, but I do, I did
You
have
don't
a
even
good
know
time.
who he is.
I don't
He's
even know who he is. I don't care.
yeah.
I don't have a dog in the fight. But
Well,
okay, I don't care what he thinks.
thank you so much. And like I said, anytime you're in the chat and you want to hop on panel or anything, just let me know and I'll let you hop on panel. And Amicus, I will check out. I don't think you're doing lives yet, are you?
No, I've been kind of reserved with it, to say the least.
Okay. Okay. Well, you're always welcome here anytime you're in the chat and you want to, you have insight or you want to talk on what the topic is or you have anything to say or because I do, like I said, I'm a therapist. So sometimes people need to talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'd rather somebody be able to come up on panel and say, hey, I'm having a really crappy day. Do you mind if I talk it out with you guys up here? Even if it's not the topic, I'm going to shut down what the topic is and I'm going to hear you out. Because I'd
Gage,
rather.
are you saying that I need help?
No, not at all. Not even in
Well, girl,
not even
girl. I'm just saying.
we all need
Take-
to,
No,
hey,
ask
we all
Gage.
need
I
some
ask
kind of
Kay. I
help.
know how you feel, Kay.
Yeah.
No,
we
I
all
don't
need
think that
we
you
all
need
need some help
help.
sometimes.
I don't
We
think you
all
need
need some
help.
help sometimes. No, but I've had people that are in the chat that they have nowhere else to turn. They have nobody that they feel will listen. I'm nobody's therapist, but I am a great listener.
No, I can tell.
So
But
so you guys have a wonderful night. I'm gonna cue the music and the chat. Make sure y'all hit the like on the way out if you enjoyed the stream. If you didn't, hit a thumbs down. I'm not offended either way. So you be honest with your feelings and whichever way you believe, it's cool with me. I will be going live, I believe, tomorrow or Saturday morning. I'm all these are running together, plus all the stuff I have going on in my personal life out here regarding school, work, all that crap. But I will be on here, so y'all be looking for me if you enjoy the channel. There are plenty of other things in my library. I know they're long, but they're worth it. There is a lot of information in there. I do break down the crime scene and the evidence gathering and all that other stuff. So there's a lot of information stuff in there. So if you can handle the boringness of that, then you will enjoy the stream. Otherwise, Maestro, cue the music. Good night, everybody.